This story is concerning wildlife. It's concerning a rhino.
A rhino?
Right? Yeah, a rhino. Okay. I used to live in Kenya when I was about 5 or 6 years old.
Okay.
And we were in this wildlife park in a grey Morris Minor. This rhino started chasing us. There's me and my sister in the back seat.
Right.
It was like something out of Jurassic Park.
Yeah.
We were turning around saying, "Believe it, Dad. Just put your foot down, Dad. We're in a field. Put your foot down." This rhino was chasing us.
One from Mark here in Derby. Went on holiday for our first romantic holiday to Tunisia years ago. Decided to take my girl into a petting zoo. I got a bag of food to feed the animals. A giant goat then went for me, putting his front legs over my shoulders and proceeding to headbutt me over a fence into one of the pens, covering me in the food and making my nose bleed. I got out of the pen, then the goat and all his mates attacked me again, sending me running and screaming like a girl out of the zoo, with my girlfriend rolling with laughter on the floor.
A tarantula climbed up the bottom of the bed on the sheet.
Yeah.
And it walked all the way up. It's eyeball to eyeball.
Wow.
And I thought to myself, what am I going to do when it climbs over my face? But then a miracle happened. It raised its 2 front legs and waved them around. And then it turned around and walked down the side of the sheet.
Boris Johnson been attacked by an ostrich. The former PM was enjoying a safari trip with his family when the bird leaned into his car and went oi oi and pecked his hand. In footage shared online, he quickly jerked from the ostrich. Don't dirty minds away from the ostrich, and shouted, "Oh, Christ, get hell," before driving off. And so I just set it out there. Have you been attacked by an animal? When I was about 7, says Trevor Jenkins, on holiday in Spain in the 70s, a monkey pulled my long hair. It was long because it was the 70s. I was in floods of tears. And as the family car drove out the car park, an elephant ripped off the car mirror. We got the message. Spanish animals aren't to be trusted. Jeremy, Brittany here from the United States. I was spurred by a rooster in my right foot a few years ago. Spurred? How do you get spurred by a rooster?
And one here from Dan in Hampshire. Morning, Mike. Is an Aussie that has been dive bombed by our version of the Magpie, which is much bigger, every springtime.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome to Morning Glory. It's 3 minutes past 6 and it is a brand new day, ladies and gentlemen. It is, of course, Thursday, the 17th of April, and have we got news for you? Apparently, there's alien life found on another planet. Yeah, you didn't think I was going to say that, did you? You thought I was going to go on about women and penises and all that. No, they found life on another planet, front page of the Sun, a planet of the plankton. Look at that. We have found a place, and it's a long way away, and it's got a funny name. It's called K218b. Which sounds like your next-door neighbour's house address, doesn't it? K218b. Apparently, the University of Cambridge is calling a discovery on this planet enormous and shocking because British space scientists have detected chemicals produced here on Earth by plankton. So, I mean, it's a tiny step for mankind, a massive step for womankind, of course, as well. See what I did there? Emma Wolf is here. Are you a woman? I think you are.
Oh, yes.
Welcome
I think
to
I
the
am.
new
Last
world.
time I checked.
Brave new world.
I'm just so pleased there is somewhere for us to go to.
Yes.
I'm going to I'm looking into flights to K218b because this planet is completely bonkers.
Yeah, there is absolutely no sign of intelligent life here. Although, yesterday, common sense prevailed. The Supreme Court did, in fact, do what we expected them to do. They did it right on this show, actually, and declared that a woman is, in fact, a woman. Thank you very much indeed. They took quite a long time about it. They explained it in several pages of prose, and they also took 5 years to come to the conclusion. But after the legal case brought by a group of Scottish women, it turns out that you are only really a woman if you're actually born one. Therefore, apropos of what you mean by that is you cannot just become a woman because you fancy it. You can't just put a dress on and call yourself a woman. You can't have surgery and call yourself a woman. You can't have, a sort of extended, set of breasts and become a woman. I'm afraid you have to be born a biological woman, otherwise you're not a woman. I mean, it's pretty straightforward, really, not difficult. 0344 499 1000. We'll be bringing you all sorts of other news this morning, of course, as well. We've got a migrant of the day from Nigeria who apparently can't be sent home because his kids might miss him. Well, how about you take the kids with you? you know, yeah, they can go as well. Meanwhile, the European problem persists. We're not allowed to bring meat and cheese from Europe now. So if you're going on holiday for Easter and you're going anywhere near a delicatessen, you know, those nice places they have where they hang the salami and stuff in, you know, you can go to Spain for that. You know, don't bring any Iberico ham back because you won't be allowed in with it. You know, those big things, the hocks that you put on your shoulder. None of that. That's right out. My son went to Sweden not long ago, brought me back some reindeer salami. It's a bit gamey, to be honest, but apparently it's now illegal, so I'm expecting the cops to turn up any minute and arrest me for trying to put it into some scrambled egg. Lots of other things. Loads of Chinese electric vehicles have been banned from military sites, apparently. I wonder why that would be. What do you mean? They might be spying on us? For heaven's sake. And when do you turn off the heating? That's become the big argument of the day. I've got a quandary for you, which I'll tell you about around my house, and I'll let you know what's going on. Also, apparently Meghan Markle's been trying to make peace with the royals by sending them samples from her new show. I don't think that's a very good idea. Anyway, listen, we've got loads to do. We've got plenty of time to do it. Morning Glory, let's get it on. Well, very, very good morning to you, Emma. You must have woken this morning with a new spring in your step. You know, here we are, halfway through April. Easter's on the horizon, you know, the resurrection, you know, the crucifixion and all of that good stuff. Yeah. We're going to play some Trump videos on that, actually, in a minute. No sign of Keir Starmer, by the way. No. The man who ages ago struggled really a lot to try and identify what a woman actually was.
Oh, he's tied himself in knots over this. I mean, finally. I do wonder, Mike, why was there ever any confusion about this? Because all the headlines are kind of equality policies in chaos over this and how
I think that's an interesting point, though, isn't it? Because the equality policies presumably will have to be torn up now, won't they? Well,
and now are we not going to see any more self-identification? What's going to happen about transgender women? Well, what's going to happen about men trying to get into women's sports? Let's just call them men, because I think we can... do you know what? It feels a relief now to actually be able to talk about this. Because for several years, I've been trying to avoid it, because every time you talk about anything like this on air, you get a lot of hate from transgender women. Yes. Trans women who are men. Men, and you say they're men. And it's just not worth it. It's never been. But now we actually know that there is a legal ruling. But
I mean, I've never been so coyed by it. But I take your point, because it's not pleasant.
It was just kind of almost
not pleasant. Yeah.
It's not what. Yeah, but why did it take an 88-page ruling? Why did it take 5 years? Why did it take a Supreme Court judgment on this? Yes. Really, when we all know.
And the reason it did,
we all know the truth.
Yeah, the reason it did was because politics and politicians in particular embraced this kind of madness, right?
But it is madness.
It is madness. And you know, I said this yesterday. I was on Jeremy Carl's show. You know, it's like they're trying to tell you something isn't true.
I know.
When you can see with your own eyes what's actually going on.
And I think that's, I mean, and lots of other areas of life, but I think that's been behind this kind of anger, this rise in kind of anger and disbelief and actually disconnection, where people have just said, why are you trying to tell us black is white? Why are you trying to tell us, you know, it's a kind of 1984 Orwellian world that we're living in, where we're being told, oh, people aren't coming into the country. Oh, these people aren't, you know, illegal immigrants. And you're kind of looking around, living your life and thinking, but this is what I can see.
And you know, immigration is good for the country.
Falling, it's not.
And diversity is our strength.
Yeah, the NHS waiting lists are falling, and they're not, and we know this, and we're living this. Yeah. Or women are men are women, and they're not. Yeah. And it's really sad.
It has been a very bizarre period, I would say, in our history, where in many ways we've been told by our political leaders, I don't say political masters, I don't believe them to be that, that, as you say, things which are clearly not true are true.
It's actually really kind of profound gaslighting. It really isn't it? And that's why I think people are just either turning off or just kind of dismissing the whole thing. Yeah. And we were just saying before the show, this is not disrespectful towards men who are, you know, struggling with gender dysphoria or any of that. I completely accept the way someone... We've always had transvesticism and things like that. There's always been men who dressed as women, men who made different choices about their sexuality. I have no problem with the way people choose to live their lives, of course, as long as they are in consensual adult relationships. Exactly. With the way they want to dress, who they want to live and love and sleep with, and whatever. Yeah. But we don't need details about what's people's genitalia. We don't need to pretend that a man is a woman. We don't need men in women's safe spaces. Safe spaces,
no. Exactly right. And that, again, it's not complicated. Let's have a look at what happened yesterday. This is the actual ruling from the Supreme Court, in case you missed it.
The central question on this appeal is the meaning of the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010. Do those terms refer to biological women or biological sex? Or is a woman to be interpreted as extending to a trans woman with a gender recognition certificate? By that I mean a person born male who now possesses a gender recognition certificate amending her gender to female. The unanimous decision of this court is that the terms woman and sex in the Equality Act 2010 refer to a biological woman and biological sex.
It took them quite a long time to get around to it, because we started sort of following it as our show was ending yesterday, and I was just like, just get on with it, just tell us a woman is a biological woman, that's
exactly.
it, the end.
And also I think we need to now look at, I mean, I'm hoping, and people have been talking about repealing this gender recognition certificate thing, because gender recognition, your gender is the biological gender that you are born. We're sort of, can't we now accept that we don't get to choose that? Right. We get to live how we want.
Yeah, just because you're holding a piece of paper doesn't make you a different gender.
What are these GRCs?
Yeah,
anyway,
and I mean, presumably they're revoked, but according to the Police and the Times, and I think this will be where the story now goes, organisations including hospitals, prisons, businesses will have to review their policies, or else they will run the risk of facing legal action.
But it's now enshrined in the law.
In the law,
and
exactly.
That's why one feels more confident at saying it, because it's in the law.
Yeah, because I was listening yesterday to a couple of commentators saying, well, you know, some Labour MPs are not accepting it. It's not a matter of accepting it, it is now the law. And I said this yesterday as well on Jeremy's show. I expect Keir Starmer to come out now and say, you know what, I made a mistake, because he's a lawyer and he's his entire life telling us how he was a lawyer and how good he was as a lawyer and how he knows how to prosecute the law and how he knows how to follow the law and how he absolutely believes in the legal framework and all the rest of it. So he must now come out and say, you know, for all of you who thought that to become a woman because you wanted to be, I'm afraid that's now illegal, and I'm afraid you will not any longer be allowed to do that under the law.
But you don't genuinely believe that he'll come out and apologise for that?
Of course he won't, and I'll tell you why, because this is what he used to say about it. Have a look at this.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right.
In 2021, you said that MP Rosie Duffield was wrong to say that only women have a cervix. In the next year, asked to define a woman in an interview in The Times, you said a woman is a female adult. In addition to that, trans women are women. Later that month, you said in an LBC phone-in, well, you just simply refused to answer the question of whether a woman can have a penis. And finally, in 2023, you said that for 99% of women, their gender is completely biological, and of course, they haven't got a penis.
So a woman can have a penis?
Nick, I'm not... I don't think we can conduct this debate with, you know...
Sorry, have I offended you in some way?
No, it's just...
It's not a debate. We're not conducting a debate. You're just defining a woman. You can't do it.
No, and Kemi Badenoch actually yesterday was very good on this.
That's actually her compilation.
Oh, okay, yeah. No, I thought she was fantastic. I mean, I'm talking about on X, on Twitter, on formerly Twitter. But she's saying, we've got the receipts, and she put together... Yeah, in fact...
That's exactly what we've just seen.
Absolutely. But I was astonished. People like Sian Berry of the Green Party saying, you know, my heart is breaking for all my trans friends and all these trans women.
Right.
What rights? We're not taking away...
Right.
Well, the only rights we're taking away, we're only asserting that biological women are women and that women don't want men, however they identify, in their changing rooms, in their prisons, in their showers, in their lavatories. Right. It's just really, really simple.
And in their school lavatories, more importantly.
Exactly. It's about safety. It's about safety for children, for young girls, for women. I mean, for how long have women had to fight for some kind of safety and equality? It's just crazy. And, you know, being a woman is a lot more than just putting on a dress.
Yeah, right.
You know, it's fun.
Well, this is that phrase that they used to use, wasn't it? That, you know, you can be recognised as a woman if you have been living as a woman for 2 years or something ridiculous, right? And I always used to say, well, what does that even mean?
What does that mean, living
as a woman? How do you do that?
I don't know what it's like to live as a man. I'm not a man. I wasn't born a man. I wasn't born male. It's just such craziness.
Well, I've never even thought of what it's like to live as a man. I just happen to be a human being.
Exactly.
You know, I don't live as a man. I live, you know, I wake up in the morning, luckily I'm still breathing, I get up, I go to work. I don't go, am I a man or a woman? I don't ask that question.
But Mike, for centuries, well, forever, babies have been born and we've gone, it's a boy or it's a girl. Yeah. When did we start? And, OK, there are very, very, very rare genetic medical cases
that's
where sex is indeterminate. And doctors deal with that.
But funny enough, they always end up in the Olympics, don't they? I mean, I've never met anybody with, indeterminate genitalia. I don't know about you, but they're always in the bleeding Olympics.
Well, I don't know about people. I don't always know about people's genitalia. I don't care. I don't want to ask. I don't ask to check what's in their underwear.
No.
But I mean, there are some very rare medical cases, and doctors deal with that usually in a sensitive manner. But apart from that, I mean, I know people, I know parents bringing up their children as gender neutral, and I maintain that it is child abuse. I maintain those children are being brought up in a most appalling,
it's a big celeb thing,
confusing way. Yeah.
I mean, all the Hollywood celebs have all got trans children. Yeah. That can't be an accident.
That's funny, isn't it? A lot of them do.
Yeah, I haven't got any in my street. I mean, I don't know about you, but, there we are. I live near Millwall. Not a lot of it down there. But anyway, I mean, let's have a look at Women for Scotland. They brought the case. This is them speaking outside the court.
We were in a really difficult place in Scotland then. We thought we were going to see rights for women rolled back, and today the judges have said what we always believed to be the case, that women are protected by their biological sex, that sex is real, and that women can now feel safe that services and spaces designated for women are for women, and we are enormously grateful to the Supreme Court for this ruling.
Presumably we can do away with phrases such as sex assigned at birth now, or men being asked, as James Whale always tells me, when you go into hospital, are you pregnant?
All this stuff.
All of that's out the window
I really hope now we can, rather than people who menstruate, chest feeding, all of this really
people
offensive...
with prostates.
People with prostates. Yeah, although it tends to be mostly on the women's side. You have to be...
No, I've seen a doctor on the BBC saying that, people with prostates. I mean,
absolutely crazy.
Incredible, yeah.
But I mean, haven't people like J.K. Rowling and Julie Bindel, haven't they been brave on this? Because it isn't easy, and you do get cancelled, and you do get attacked, and you do get threatened.
And look at J.K. Rowling, I mean, what she's been through.
That's what I mean. Over the past 5 years, the craziness of what they've had to stand up for and what they've kind of become. And isn't it funny to see all the Harry Potter stars? Emma Watson and Grindel. What's his name? Rupert Grint.
Yeah.
Grindel, I don't know who he is. But they've all gone down.
Nobody would know who he was if it wasn't for J.K. Rowling.
No, of course not.
Would ever have heard
has
of
he done anything since?
No.
Has Emma Watson done anything really of note?
I think she became an ambassador for the United Nations.
And
then she went to Columbia.
And then dropped out of Cambridge or Oxford.
And went to Columbia for a while.
That was it.
Took part in a few anti-Israel demonstrations.
They're all, guess what? They're all wrong.
Yeah, they are. And we are, once again, the home of common sense. Correct. This from Keith. I'm starting a business hiring only trans women, men's strength, women's wages, no maternity leave.
Brilliant.
How about that? I mean, the thing is, people did make this point yesterday, and of course you shouldn't need to make the point, and it's not about that. This should not be used as an excuse to abuse trans women. Nobody's going to abuse trans women. No. Trans women are trans women. They're not men. They can do whatever it is that they do. Just stop getting in my face and telling me that you're a woman.
You're a woman when you're not.
I'm not interested. The law says you're not a woman, so you're not. Simple.
But more importantly, I hope it has a trickle-down effect on things like children being given puberty blockers, all of that kind of stuff. I do hope that we are...
And also the whole 72 genders crap that they get taught in school. Can we take a step back from that as well?
Yeah. And the whole notion of self-identifying, because I know children who are now self-identifying as cats and dinosaurs and all of that, and we just need to get back to reality.
Yeah.
You can play, you can pretend, you can dress up, you can live how you want, but you're not something that you're not.
Exactly, and you can't walk into the wrong changing room or the wrong toilet or the wrong prison. As simple as that.
Prison.
Shouldn't be difficult, really, should it? 18 minutes past 6. The world of common sense is starting to look a lot brighter, is it not? Thanks to Talk and thanks to people like me, frankly, who've been banging on about this, and Julie Hartley-Brewer and other people on this station, and you, Emma, as well, who have actually, fought back against this ridiculous nonsense, which is clearly nonsense, and we've been calling it nonsense for many, many a year. Finally now, the law has actually said that we were right and everybody else was wrong. Thank you very much indeed. 90 minutes past 6.
I think what they also need to consider, and this is definitely a legal matter and something that will be much debated, what now happens to those toilets and changing rooms that have been designated as unisex?
Well, we just had that text from that lady.
Well, it did. So I would now suggest if the Supreme Court, the highest court of this land, have said that women are women and men are men, and women can't have penises, and women have XX chromosomes, and men have XY chromosomes, and so on, that now there needs to be a reshuffling, should we say, of this woke nonsense.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 21 minutes past 6. The world of common sense is looking a lot better this morning after that ruling by the Supreme Court yesterday. Here's a voice note from Tony.
Morning, Mike. Tony from Stoke-on-Trent. Good morning, hope you're good, mate. So now that we've finally found out that men are men and women are women, God knows why it's taken so long to find that out, but hey-ho. I do hope that the NHS can now call people Mr. or Mrs. or Miss without the fear of being prosecuted. And also, I hope that all male prisoners that are serving in female prisons are now transferred over to male prisons. Keep up the good work, mate.
No problem at all, Tony. Thank you very much indeed. Some good questions there. Actually, again, Jeremy Carl yesterday had a call from a guy who said that he had, I don't know, I think he said something on Facebook or Twitter or something like that, and he got arrested. 10 police officers came round, all to do with gender specificity, all to do with trans women, and he was arrested and dragged down to the police station and kept there for hours and hours on end, and given the sort of 3rd degree because he had said something that they thought was possibly a hate crime, which presumably all this will now disappear because it can't be a hate crime anymore, to say that a trans woman is a man.
Well, let's hope that he gets a fulsome apology from the police, and let's hope that, as Tony in Stoke there says, let's hope that all male prisoners are transferred into male prisons.
Yeah.
Male rapists and things like that.
There shouldn't be any male prisoners
have a rude
in
awakening.
female prisons, should there?
Of course there shouldn't.
This should never have happened. Absolute madness.
There should not be same-sex wards as well in hospitals and things like that.
No.
And let's hope that they sort out, I think the NHS, I think education, and I think the workplace, they're going to have to really, as they say, look at their policies on this.
I mean, the thing is, they will have to completely revamp everything that they do inside the NHS because they're one of the worst offenders of all this stuff.
They really are. And maybe they could start by getting rid of all the rainbow nonsense.
Yeah, that would be good. Let's talk about boffins and space, because this is always good fun. Shock signs of biological activity have been seen on a distant planet, and it could be packed with life, teeming with life, some papers are saying this morning. Sun's got a great big graphic on pages 4 and 5, which talks about how boffins use light waves to search for alien life, and it's a very long way away. Light years away, in fact, I think, isn't it?
Well, it's 124 light years away from Earth, so it's a lot further than the moon.
Right.
By comparison, the moon... Did you see the full moon overnight this morning?
Yeah, I did.
I think it's very creepy that on the day that we discover K2-18b, the full moon is pulsing with life.
Yes.
Anyway, yeah, this is brilliant. I'm definitely looking into flights to this place.
Yeah.
It's got biosignatures, Mike,
Don't
which
go
means...
British Airways, whatever you do.
No, I'm not going British Airways, and they still haven't refunded me for the flight 6 weeks ago, by the way. Yeah, it's got these biosignatures, which are signs of life.
Yeah.
It's a huge... Is it a liquid water ocean?
Apparently, they think that the planet, which is a lot bigger than Earth, is covered with some kind of liquid ocean. Yeah, that's what they're saying.
So it's 2.6 times the size of Earth.
Yeah.
But, I mean, when you read what the scientists... OK, there's all these crazy graphics in the sun, and I love the fact that someone's just shoved in the corner. They call me Bug Lightyear. Yes. I mean, someone's done this graphic. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But when you read what the scientists are saying, they say, you know, we kept hearing these markers, we kept getting these signals.
Right.
We tried to ignore it, we tried to disprove it for years and years and years. We've been working on this. And they say it's a real shock to the system.
Right.
Genuinely, there is something out there. This isn't just like, you know, a headline with, oh, alien life out there.
Right.
The scientists really think there's stuff going on there.
Katy Perry, who went up in the Blue Origin...
and managed to make it all... You send these celebrities...
Herself, right?
You send these celebrities into space. I mean, they crossed the, you know, the space line or whatever for 10 minutes and came back. And they managed to make it all about themselves.
Absolutely right. And according to this Sun graphic, right, K2-18b is a lot further away than she went. Her flight peaked at 2,300 miles an hour. It would take her millions of years to get there, and that's if she set off this afternoon.
I wish she would.
I think she should.
I think she should.
Forget about the tour. Just head off to, you know, K2-18b. And then they say, also, interestingly enough, it's all been discovered by the James Webb Space Telescope, which is apparently currently located about 930,000 miles from Earth.
Oh.
I mean, it's sort of mind-boggling, all this stuff.
Yeah.
You can't really get your head around it.
No.
And they put a human to scale on this graphic, and it just looks incredibly small. Humans just seem to be incredibly... I've always believed that you can't possibly guarantee that there isn't human life of some kind, or any kind of life somewhere in the universe, because we don't even know how big the universe is.
No.
Or how far it's going to go. It's infinity and beyond, literally, isn't it?
It really is. I feel completely out of my depth, literally out of my depth when you try and get your head around this stuff.
Yeah.
Because how do you know? How do you know any of this?
They say scientists expect life on Hycean worlds, which is apparently a world which has got a lot of water.
Yeah. Hydrogen and ocean.
To be aquatic, with no land mammals like here on Earth. So there might be a lot of fish, perhaps, or, you know, sea creatures, crustaceans, I don't know.
Well, it's one of the biggest landmarks in the history of science.
Yeah.
And these are the University of Cambridge professors.
Yeah.
And there are these life forms that might be churning away out there. I wonder if they have a Labour government as well.
Yeah, probably not, hopefully. Anyway, meanwhile, back in the land of the living, back on Earth, the EU has got new rules, apparently, which apply to it. So if you're going to the European Union over the course of the Easter holidays, because many of you will be travelling tomorrow, because Good Friday, of course, Maundy Thursday today, I suppose we should mark, new restrictions have been brought in after cases of foot and mouth have been discovered in Europe. There are currently no reported cases of disease in the UK, but basically you can't bring anything which has got anything to do with pigs, cows, sheep, goats. You can't bring dairy items such as milk, butter, cheese and yoghurt, sandwiches filled with meat or dairy products along with cured meats and raw meats, regardless of whether they're packed or packaged or whether they've been bought at duty-free.
This is really, really quite big.
I mean,
when people go, but when people go to Europe, if they're driving, especially on the, you know, if they're coming back on the ferry or whatever, they really do pack their car with all the lovely deli treats. I mean, one of the best things about Europe, about Spain, about France, Italy, makes your mouth water just thinking about it.
Yeah.
About all the amazing deli stuff, about the wine, of course, but also
well, like I was saying, I was joking about the Iberico ham. You can buy the stuff that you can't get here. I mean, you can get most things now in London, but you can't get everything.
Well, you can go into Soho and buy stuff that's very, very, very...
well, you have to go to Borough Market, don't worry.
Yeah, Borough Market, but it's going to be a lot more. Whereas when you come back from Europe and you bring back all your favourite stuff, you just go to the supermarkets out there and bring back good stuff. It really, I mean, is this just temporary restrictions?
I think it is. Yeah, because it's basically because they're trying to keep out foot and mouth, which is what they say.
My worry about these restrictions is they stay forever.
You might not remember them, but I remember those days when I used to fly around, you know, I was working in Scotland and they had the foot and mouth scare, and whenever you got on a plane, you had to walk through this disinfected sort of little
chemical tray.
Yeah,
which a bit like farms.
Kind of mad.
Yeah.
You know, I just remember I used to go to Ireland quite a lot, and you'd have to walk through this thing, and I go, what do you think's going on here?
Very weird.
Absolutely ridiculous. But here's what you can't bring back. Pork, beef, lamb, mutton, goat, venison, other products made from these meats, such as sausages, and I presume any kind of salami, milk and dairy products like butter, cheese and yoghurt. Government has said you can bring in up to 2 kilos of powdered infant milk, infant food, or special food needed for medical reasons.
Yeah,
then you can say, look, I must have this particular form of breed for a medical reason.
For a baby.
You know, I've got to bring it in, you know.
Yeah, no, they've always had these kind of exemptions on, you can take milk, you can take some liquids for babies, for children.
Yeah.
But no, it sounds like the dairy ban as well, the cheese, milk, ban is pretty widespread there.
Yeah, it is.
But also sandwiches containing those things. What if you're just coming back and you've got the ham sandwich?
Do you remember this was one of the arguments when Brexit happened? That you couldn't take a ham sandwich to Europe because they would stop you from bringing it in. What you can still continue to bring in, however, up to you if you think this is in any way sad or mad, fish, poultry such as chicken, duck, goose and other products made from these meats. So foie gras is apparently all right.
Okay.
Other animal products like eggs and honey. I don't understand. I mean, if you're trying to keep away foot and mouth, wouldn't you keep out all farm products?
Especially eggs.
And chickens.
Yeah.
I mean, how are chickens somehow exempt?
I have no idea, and I have no idea why eggs are exempt either.
Yeah, very strange.
But all I can imagine is this is going to increase, you know, the travel chaos that is forecast for tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday and Easter Monday. Everybody coming back, schools reopen again on Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yeah.
This is going to increase it. But can you imagine having your car searched and then arguing with them whether that is made from chicken or actually a rare form of, I don't know, venison?
I remember going back to the early days of travelling.
Meat looks like meat.
Yeah, I remember going back to the early days of travelling to America when I first lived over there and when I first had a girlfriend there. And I remember turning up once at American Customs with a jar of Branston pickle. Yeah. And they couldn't work out. They were like, what's this?
What's this?
I said, it's pickle, huh?
Couldn't travel without
that. They eventually let me in with it, but they couldn't. I had to let the guy taste it. You know, I had to open it because he was like, "What is it?" I said, "It's kind of, you know, it's pickled vegetables in a kind of a vinegary brine." That kind of thing.
How would you describe
he was just, he didn't have a clue. Well, so it was talking about a language barrier. He had no idea. But we managed to get it in the end. So
but I love the fact that you were able to take it in, whereas now you literally can't even take in a small thing of shampoo.
No.
Oh, it's a terrorist threat.
Yeah.
Why have we never repealed this whole airport craziness about liquids being a... So literally you can't go in with your liquids, but the other side of the line you can go and buy a bottle of water for £5 and take that. I mean, it's such craziness.
Doesn't make any sense. Let's get a voice note from Sarah.
Hi, this is Sarah from Wrexham. Did we really have to have all this court case and all this money wasted to realise that women are women and men are men? I just find it as another extraordinary waste of money in our crazy, crazy country.
Yeah.
It does seem mad.
It is a huge waste of money.
5 years.
And public time.
Yeah.
And, you know, we have these massive court backlogs.
But let's
not
forget, it was the Scottish government. It was the Scottish government who the case was brought against.
Well, I hope Sturgeon, you know, you said about Starmer, I hope Sturgeon, Nicola Sturgeon will come out now and apologise for her gender recognition nonsense. Yeah. And she won't. She'll go quiet.
And John Swinney should do the same, the current First Minister. Mike says Adrian in Buckhurst Hill, can announcements on trains begin with ladies and gentlemen again? I don't know. Alan in Merseyside, if this new planet is teeming with life, it's certainly not the Great Britain that we know. And Joanna from Salisbury, I'm not exaggerating how stupid the Mayor of London is making the Met look at the moment. He's giving them a police staff only Easter egg hunt, no children allowed. Yeah, that's a story we're going to look at a bit later on. Apparently the Metropolitan Police have organised an Easter egg hunt. Maybe they could do a sort of hunt for some criminals and see if they could arrest a few of them.
Yeah, maybe they could actually do their jobs.
And maybe lock them up. That would be a good idea,
be nice.
Wouldn't it? We've got loads more to do. Coming up 6:32, we're going to talk about migrants. 705 migrants came over the channel just the other day. We're going to be talking about electric vehicles and why they are now even more worthless than they've ever been. And also, Britain apparently is going to agree to send some German missiles to Ukraine. Don't know where that came from. It's 6:33.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 6:34. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock, of course. Morning, Mike, says Sharon in Staffordshire. Mike, does it take a Supreme Court to tell us what a woman is? What a load of BS. I'm not interested, and I don't care. There's far more important things in this crazy world that we live in to worry about. Well, Sharon, you may well say that, and we don't have to worry about it. I think it's just worth noting that every now and again the world of common sense does reset itself, and we've been banging on about this for a long time. Let's talk about electric vehicles, because there was £275,000 worth of electric vehicles found abandoned on a road, which is a very weird story, something that I didn't know, and it's a company actually that makes these vehicles that I've never even heard of,
Yeah, it's to do with the Tesla stocks plunging, wasn't it? And apparently this company has been... I have not heard of the name of them.
No.
I hadn't heard of them before.
It's 9 electric cars from an American brand called Fisker, F-I-S-K-E-R. They filed for bankruptcy in June of last year after months of rescue talks failed. But somewhere in the roadside in Nottingham...
That was it,
There's
Nottingham.
9 cars that have just been dumped there. And I don't know supposedly somebody's going to come and take them away. But I mean, I wonder if you can sort of go and just say, I'll give you 50 quid for one.
Well, is this
drive
is this part of the return of common sense? That they're realising electric vehicles are completely uncommonsensical?
Well, funnily enough, I didn't tell this story yesterday, but the weekend I was driving back up to London. I drove into a sort of relatively busy service stop to get some petrol, and there was a couple, and I thought, what are they doing? And there was a couple sitting sort of eating sandwiches in this car, and I realised I put petrol in the car, went inside, paid for it, got a coffee, came back out, sat in the car, looked at a couple of things, looked up, and they were charging their electric vehicle. And they had obviously been there for quite some time, and they were still there after I'd finished filling up my car, paying for it, and leaving. And you just think, I could not drive like that. If I'm driving from where I come from in Sussex up to London, it's about an hour and a half, right?
Yeah.
If you have to add in half an hour for charging your car, suddenly it's 2 hours. If you have to add in 45 minutes, suddenly it's 3 hours.
People literally have to factor in a couple of hours. They might get to the next service stop, and then they can't charge it because they're waiting in a queue because there aren't enough charging points. Yeah. It adds so much to people's journeys. And they both looked so fed up. They were both sort of older couple sitting there just staring off into space. Waiting for the charge. And the they
guy
probably
kept
weren't even
out.
Going that far. They don't seem to have much range, do they, these cars?
And the front page of the paper today says electric cars with Chinese parts are banned from UK military sites because the Ministry of Defence are worried that they might be being used to collect intelligence and send it back to Beijing. So, actually, frankly, when I see somebody now driving one of these BYD cars, Build Your Dream, which is like the worst Chinese translation of all time, I actually think, you know what, you're probably doing some damage to the country. You shouldn't be driving one of these cars.
I know.
I would put a massive tariff on them and say, you know what, if you want to buy one of these Chinese electric vehicles, it's going to cost you at least 50 grand extra on top of what they're charging you.
Absolutely.
And then see if anybody wants one.
Meanwhile...
And that's what Trump's doing.
Yeah, exactly. And, there we go, another marker for common sense. But meanwhile, Jonathan Reynolds, I think, is jetting out to China.
The fake solicitor.
Yeah.
He's going to offer them some fake legal advice.
For trade talks out there.
Yeah, because he now runs British Steel. I mean, hard to believe.
Really is.
You might not be surprised to know he made it onto Plank of the Week this week, because he's gone from being basically a jumped-up councillor who lied about his CV, lied about the fact that he was never a solicitor, and is now running a massive industrial company.
It's
with what
outrageous.
Experience exactly?
No.
Staff at UK's secretive military site in RAF White in Cambridgeshire, oops, you've just given it away, guys, have been told they must park EVs made using Chinese tech at least 2 miles away from key buildings. So what have these cars got?
Exactly. So what are the staff going to do? Park 2 miles away and then walk the 2 miles into work every day?
It's a great idea.
And the whole thing is just absolutely ridiculous.
Find an electric Chinese car and park it that 2 miles away from where you have to go.
Yeah, and then we'll have to get you some extra
and if that is true,
transport to get you to the building.
Hang on, if that's true, they can't be allowed to drive past government buildings anywhere.
Exactly.
So they should be banned from central London.
Well, they shouldn't.
Right?
They're not safe.
They should be banned from going anywhere near any police stations. I mean, this is an incredible story to me.
It really is. It's complete madness.
Yeah.
Also, Salisbury Plain military training base has also introduced a ban on certain electric vehicles.
Right.
I mean, this is widespread concern about the safety of these. about the fact that these electric vehicles could basically be spying on us.
Yeah, exactly right. Absolutely unbelievable stuff. We're going to come up with a migrant today. We're going to talk about migrants as well. 705 of them came in the other morning, and we mentioned it yesterday because it broke just before we stopped the show yesterday. The Home Office is actually, believe it or not, considering this mad idea that they can actually reduce the number of illegal migrants in this country by getting rid of some illegal migrants and bringing in some migrants who are more likely to be successful asylum seeking. So therefore you don't actually reduce the number. So
you're not cutting them at all?
Not cutting them at all. If anything, probably inspiring people to come back a second time. So you probably end up with more migrants than you had before.
Which part of, you know, returning migrants do they not understand?
Yeah.
Why has it become a swap?
Yeah, I don't know.
Why can't we have control of our own borders?
Why can't
we decide
who's
in our country?
It's a totally mad idea.
It's completely mad.
Incredibly ridiculous. It's 6:40. This from Mike saying, Mike, just heard you say you're banned from bringing cheese and ham from Europe. Pity this doesn't also apply to migrants. What if a migrant's got a cheese sandwich?
I wonder if they would be allowed to bring their stuff.
They have to chuck it overboard.
They're allowed to bring half their families.
Yeah, that's true.
But we're not allowed to bring a slab of brie.
No, ridiculous.
I mean, this is outrageous.
Margaret in Yorkshire, will the King be remembering Maundy Thursday of Holy Week like his mother did, I wonder? And Damon says this from Wigan. How the hell did we ever get to this point? It's crazy. There was only men and women, and I won't be told about any other gender. The law is right for a change. Yeah, it does make a pleasant change, doesn't it? 6:40, we'll be back after this.
Obviously, we're just incredibly pleased with this decision, and I really want to pay tribute for Women Scotland, who have fought and fought and fought for years. They're all volunteers. They've just been fighting because it's so important for the women of Scotland, for the women of the UK, and I think that this will reverberate around the world. But we intervened, LGBT Alliance and a number of lesbian groups, because of the rights of lesbians, which are constantly overlooked.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 6:43. Emma Wolf is here with me. We're talking our way through various subjects this morning, including an NHS story which will blow your socks off. We'll tell you about that in a minute. Jay's got a voice note on banned items.
Morning, guys. Fantastic show as always. Yeah, can't take any liquids, can't do this on flights, but you can let a load of people in who we know nothing about illegally. If they stop coming in, then we wouldn't have to ban everything going on the flights, would we?
Yeah, well, certainly there is some truth to that. It is mad, isn't it, that whenever you do anything legally in this country, you get hammered, and if you do anything illegally, nothing happens to you.
And
shoplifting's fine, breaking into the country, no problem.
Absolutely.
Breaking into people's houses, no worries, you know.
It really, I mean, and I think the airport thing is absolutely crazy. It's such a good voice note, that, because think about the things that you queue up, you shuffle along, you take off your belt, your socks, your shoes, your pants, everything. You have your suitcases gone through.
Yeah.
You can't take a bottle of water. You can't take anything over 100 millilitres because it might be a terrorist
threat. You have to confiscate your aftershave.
And then you've got people coming in, over 700 people on boats yesterday.
Yeah.
I think it's nearly
They came actually the day before when it wasn't even very nice weather.
Every day now, for the rest of the year, they're going to be coming over.
We know it's going to hit 1,000 a day, isn't it?
It's going to be 1,000 a day. We're already up to nearly 9,000 this year.
Yeah.
We are already, the figures are 42% higher on the same period last year.
Yeah.
This is not
stopping
working.
The boats.
Yvette Cooper is not stopping the boats.
No.
Keir Starmer, I mean, he's gone AWOL. I don't know where he is. He's probably on a boat somewhere.
Yeah.
This is absolutely, the migrant numbers are, you know,
insane.
Sort of, they're
insane, absolutely insane.
To drift
and
up.
I think it's fair to say also that the whole migration sort of problem in Western Europe has wrecked Western Europe.
Of course it has.
You know, thanks to Angela Merkel. Yeah. But we'll come back to that. Let's talk about the NHS, because Wes Streeting, of course, keeps telling us that, you know, they're getting the waiting list down. It's one of the mantras of the government. You know, not only are we putting money back into your pocket, wrong. Not only are we, you know, proving that growth is coming, wrong. You know, not only are we...
The economy's booming, wrong.
Controlling inflation, wrong. They're now saying that they're going to be basically removing 2 million people, as many as 2 million people, off the waiting list by giving them to GPs instead of asking them to go to hospital.
This is another example of the epic gaslighting of this government. You've seen the tweets from Starmer and Labour. Over the past few days, they've really been pushing. We have wiped, 2 million off the waiting list. This is what we promised.
Yeah.
All of this. Now there's a story, really good, interesting story in the Mail about the wheezers they're using. Basically, the GPs are getting these kind of 20 quid bonuses.
Per
they're
patient.
being paid per patient. And this is happening across the country in many GP practices. They're being paid to keep people off the waiting list so they can divert them. And it's actually really dangerous because sometimes people do need to be referred to hospitals. So what GPs do, they can refer patients for other things. They can call a specialist. They can ask their advice. They can put them on medication. They can look at alternative ways. They're basically massaging the waiting list.
Of course they are, which I've been saying, again, for months and months and months.
So dishonest and so unsafe as well. Because sometimes, say for a cancer screening, you need to go to a hospital, you need to be referred quickly. But Labour do not want the waiting list numbers driving up, and so they're trying to drive them right down. They're trying to drive them down by 2 million by the end of next year.
Imagine this, right? Doctors will receive a £20 bonus each time they avoid referring a patient to hospital. So they're just going to not refer them to hospital. That doesn't sound like a very healthy way to proceed, does it?
It really isn't. It really isn't safe. And they're saying, oh, well, they'll stop masses of people being sent to hospital for unnecessary appointments.
Can you imagine? You go to the doctor, right, and you go, look, I need to go to the hospital, I think. You know, can I get a referral, please, so I can see a specialist to get a scan? No, I'm sorry, I can't do that. And another guy comes in and goes, here's your 20 quid. Thanks very much indeed. That's how we're running the NHS now.
Well, that's how it's being run.
Yeah.
And actually, you do notice these things. You know, when you do go and you say, oh, I'd like a referral, and they're sort of, you know, they're trying to suggest other options.
Yeah.
I mean, this thing about, oh, offering them medication, oh, it's increasing diversions from the elective waiting list. I'm sorry, these are weasel words, and people are going to die as a result if they're not referred
of course they are.
properly
and I've been
to the
talking
specialist
about this
because they don't want big waiting lists in our hospitals.
Yeah, and I've been talking about this for many a month, and people are telling me every single day what I absolutely believe to be true. They're cancelling operations, they're cancelling procedures for people and moving them off one list and putting them onto another list, thereby saying, oh, we've lost 300,000 people, we've cut 300,000 people, we're giving more appointments. They're making more appointments, no question about that. But most of the appointments are then being cancelled. So it's a kind of it's a sort of a shell game that they're operating.
It's deeply, deeply dishonest.
Yeah,
and
it is.
They're massaging the numbers so that once you're seen once, even if you're just seen by anybody, then you're off the waiting list. You're not necessarily waiting, even though you're still waiting for treatment.
Yeah, exactly right. Let's get a voice note from Pete on the Metropolitan Police's Easter egg hunt.
Good morning, Mike and Emma. Great show. Pete from Lincolnshire. Regarding the Met Police on the Easter egg hunt, you can see the headlines now, can't you? Police can't find any Easter eggs, and that just typifies where we are as a nation. police force. Great show. Cheers.
I'm sure that's true. Peter Blexley actually put this out yesterday, and I meant to do something about it, but I'm glad that it's been picked up by the papers, because they were actually quoting from Peter Blexley, who said the decision was ludicrous and made for terrible optics for a police force under pressure to increase crime-solving rates. Officers at the Empress State Building in West London, which includes specialist organised crime and counter-terror teams, are being offered the activity today. So presumably they're getting the bank holiday off, are they? So
Ridiculous.
The last day of work, Maundy Thursday, let's have an Easter egg hunt.
We need a picture of them doing their Easter egg hunt next to the criminals running out of the shops full of Easter eggs.
Full of Easter eggs.
I mean, this is a little bit like the NHS workers. Do you remember during COVID?
Yeah.
Dancing on the wards and all these TikTok videos.
Yeah.
Oh, well, but staff need their downtime and all of this nonsense, when
Yeah.
actually, you know, they were just having a laugh in the empty hospital wards dancing around.
Right, and you know how we always saying that we never hear from Keir Starmer when it comes to Christian holidays, and I've yet to hear him saying anything about Lent.
No, it's
anything
really
about Easter,
offensive. Nothing about Mother's Day,
really
nothing
annoying.
about Palm Sunday.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, what were we getting? We were getting Eid.
Well, the most bizarre one was we had Eid, we had Ramadan, but then we had the Sikh festival of something or other, which I can't remember, where they completely redecorated Downing Street like some kind of Gurudwara, which is fine and dandy. I don't mind them doing that, but why don't you acknowledge Easter? What's wrong with Easter?
Why are they ignoring every single holiday in the Christian calendar?
I know, it's bizarre.
It was on the same day as Palm Sunday.
I know. Let's have a look at Caroline Leavitt, who is, of course, our hero. She's the White House Press Secretary. This is her laying out Easter plans for the White House. Check it out.
There have been many talks with countries. We've had more than 15 deals, pieces of paper put on the table, proposals that are actively being considered. And as we've said consistently, more than 75 countries have reached out. So there's a lot of work to do. We very much understand that, but we do believe that we can announce some deals very soon.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You got plank of the week there to the production team, I'm afraid. That wasn't obviously
very
about
interesting
Easter,
about trade deals.
but it was a good one about trade deals. But we'll see if we can find the actual Easter one. But meanwhile, how about Donald Trump, who sat down yesterday and actually made some Easter prayers and described some of the things from the Bible that well, it's quite remarkable. Have a look at this.
3 days later, Christ's followers found the empty tomb. Jesus had defeated darkness and death and promised new life to all of humankind. And that's what we celebrate each year at Easter, as we joyfully proclaim on Sunday, He is risen. The death and resurrection of Jesus are the essence of the Christian faith. Whether rich or poor, healthy or sick, young or old, or in times of peace or war, Christians everywhere find solace and hope in the knowledge that Christ died for them and that they could be united with Him in heaven. Countless millions of Americans have been moved by Christ's example to heal the sick, defend their families, lift up their communities, and make our country stronger, better, and greater than ever before.
Isn't that nice?
I find that really, really moving, actually. And I know that's kind of crazy to say that about Donald Trump. He managed not to make it about himself, which is also quite good.
I did expect him to kind of go, it's a great tomb. It's one of the best tombs ever, you know.
Yeah, make America.
Tomb.
And he showed me the way.
Yeah.
No, I thought that was very moving, very important. And why can't we have a Prime Minister who acknowledges that we live in a Christian country?
Yeah,
because we don't,
you know what happened? You'll play that to the lefties and they'll make fun of it. They'll go, oh, yeah, you know, oh, you believe in the big man in the sky, do you? But they're quite happy to allow Muslims to build mosques everywhere.
And to be respectful to their faith.
And they allow them lots of time, and then we get, you know, Ramadan lights, we get, you know, successive, you know, processions all over the place.
My son's school making Eid Mubarak cards.
Yeah, you know, all of that.
Didn't get anything from Mother and Sunday.
If you try and do it for Christians, you know, you get mocked. And I'm not particularly church-going. I was raised as a Catholic.
I'm not either, but I thought that was very lovely.
I was raised as a Catholic, and I, you know, have been married in a church and all of that. Yeah. You know, and there's many people who feel as if that whole religious experience for them has been covered over and sort of never to be seen again, because you're not allowed to admit that you're a Christian because people just laugh at you.
Yeah.
But you can be a very devout Muslim, and that's not a problem at all.
It's not a problem.
You're not allowed to make fun of it.
We're not allowed to make fun of it, and we are respectful to other faiths. And I think what Donald Trump did there, I wish we had a Prime Minister who could acknowledge how people live in this country as well, and their beliefs and their faith. Yeah.
A couple of things to mention on the celeb front. Ed Sheeran.
I can't believe we haven't discussed the bin strike. Good.
Oh, the bin strike.
I'm sick of it.
Yeah,
I mean, they must be. The Birmingham residents must be absolutely sick of it.
The unions are now blaming Angela Rayner, saying it's all her fault. In the Mail today, the new Time magazine list has come out of the most influential people in the world, and believe it or not, they've actually got Keir Starmer on the list in a 100 index of Titans. But you can tell it's not that important because Ed Sheeran's in there as well.
Exactly.
So Keir Starmer and Ed Sheeran from Britain, waving the flag.
Sheeran is on your plank of the week. I mean, he should just be a permanent fixture there. What is it about Ed Sheeran?
No,
I love his music. I love his music. Yeah. No, I'm sure he's a lovely man.
I don't think he's a Titan, though, is he?
No, I wouldn't put him as that influential.
No.
I mean, maybe in music-wise. But when do you turn off the heating, Mike? Because you like your studio very cold. I've done so many shows with you. Your evening show on tour used to be like, we used to say, we're going into the cryo chamber.
Yeah, it was a bit like that.
So cold.
I like it cold. Yeah, I mean, to be honest, for me, it's not a question of when do you turn it off, it's when you turn it on. Because I don't actually have. I live in a flat in London, so it doesn't get that cold. It does get quite hot in the summer, and it's. I mean, I do have a heated towel rail. I'm not going to give too much away, and I put that on in the morning. When I'm about to have a shower. But I don't really put the heating on unless it's really freezing in the middle of winter. So I can't remember the last time I put the heating actually on.
No, well,
I don't think I've even had it on this year.
No.
At all.
Well, that's because it's properly built. The building is properly built with good insulation and things, isn't it?
Yeah, I've got decent windows, which makes a big difference.
I think that's the thing, which is why it's such a nonsense. All this stuff about heat pumps and trying to retrofit all these billions of buildings over the country. But no, apparently this survey in the Mail says that people turn off the heating. Yeah. Well, they have these sneaky things where the couples are out, one partner is out, and then the other one turns on the heating. But people tend to turn off their heating when the temperature drops. When the temperature drops below 15 is when the heating goes on. Well, I'll tell
you what's happening now. I imagine most people are probably not putting any heating on because they can't afford it.
Well, they can't afford it, exactly.
Because it's gone through the roof.
So everybody had the heating off in March, and then it got really cold last week, and everyone put the heating back on again. But yeah, as you say, I mean, heating bills are through the roof, so people are just trying to not.
They absolutely are. A couple of things to mention at the end of the show as well, for the end of the first hour. Meghan is back in the news. Apparently she's been trying to make peace with the royal family. This is a new one on me. She's been sending samples from her new business.
Well, I hope they're samples of jam.
Well, I hope so. Yeah.
They're not the urine samples or anything like that.
Yeah, samples of jam and all the other rubbish that she's making. Yeah. Apparently she's been sending them to Clarence House.
I wonder whether they would...
Do you think they get returned to sender on it? No thanks.
Would they even dare to taste it?
I don't know.
Would it be safe? There's another interesting royal story I have to mention. Apparently, Harry was so into his African charity Sentebale, wasn't he? And one of the papers, and I forget which one, is reporting that his interest in it...
he just lost interest in it,
Sort of lost interest after he got married to Meghan.
Yeah, funny
which is really sad, because he was very dedicated to all that stuff.
Yeah.
And one hopes the same thing won't happen with Invictus. But yeah, there's a really interesting piece all about how he sort of, his focus since he's been out in California.
Well, she likes Invictus, though, because she can go on the back of a golf cart and, have the minions kind of waving at her. And she can also go to lots of arenas and watch sport and look as if she loves her husband.
For a bit, she can go for a few days.
It's not so much fun to go to Africa, where it's a bit poor and,
no, exactly,
a bit downtrodden, and you don't get the media coverage that you would get otherwise.
Exactly, and on a serious note, that's why the charity feel quite sort of betrayed by all that, because he sort of, went off to the West Coast and lost interest in it.
Yeah. Should mention a great cartoon in the Telegraph. Matt's cartoon's always brilliant. He's got one with two people walking under a sign saying "Summer of Discontent." If someone working from home goes on strike and nobody notices, did the strike actually happen?
I know.
I'm sure that's going to be true.
Are people working from home even working?
I mean, if the council workers that don't do much go on strike, imagine, what would actually happen. What about this older and wiser story? Baby boomers are being urged to work later in life after the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, declared that the 70s are the new 50s.
Yeah.
Well, it's good news for me, because I haven't seen the 50s for a while.
I like that. I feel like I've got another 30 or 40 years of...
I mean, on a serious...
apparently people's brain, sort of, their cognition and things are as good as they used to be in their 50s when they're well into their 70s.
Yeah.
And that's
Unless you're
Joe
Biden, of course.
It's kind of not so good news that people are being encouraged to work much, much, much longer if they don't want to, if they're doing really stressful work, or builders or whatever, that you may not be able to work as long. But I think it's great news. I think we need to fight back against the sort of ageism thing that still prevails, that after basically 60, you're sort of on borrowed time, which is absolute
and you must
nonsense.
stop working.
You must stop working.
And the number of people as well that I know who have stopped working and sort of regretted it, and then otherwise,
or do other things,
or who have just like had left with themselves with so little to do that they've just sort of faded away and died.
I think
because without a purpose in life, you kind of go, well, what's the point?
Absolutely. I think formally retiring is the worst thing you can do for your health. What are you meant to do then? Just stop at 60 and sit around for the next 5-10 years.
And if you're not going to play golf every day, what are you going to do?
No, it's nonsense.
It's not much fun at all. Anyway, listen, very good to see you. Emma Wolf will be back again next week, I'm sure. We've got much more to do. Coming up, John says this: Mike, what a mad country we live in, where it takes a judgment from lawyers to define our medical professionals at the NHS what male and female actually is, and whether strapping great blokes will stop being asked if we are pregnant, says John. And Mike, will those who deny yesterday's High Court ruling, says Keith, be as vigorously persecuted as those who previously questioned men being able to use women's toilets? Very good question as well. Coming up, we'll talk to Fiona McAnina from Sex Matters. That's a great campaigning group, of course. They've been talking sense for years. We'll also take your calls. Keep your voice notes coming as well. 0344 499 1000. We'll be back with more of Morning Glory after the news.
I can announce this government will begin the biggest sustained increase in defence spending since the end of the Cold War. We will deliver our commitment to spend 2.5% of GDP on defence, but we will bring it forward so we reach that level in 2027.
The answer from European capitals has been as resounding as it is clear. We are in an era of rearmament to respond to the short-term urgency to act and to support Ukraine, but also to address the long-term need to take on more responsibility for our own European security.
On Saturday, we also agreed a new £2.2 billion loan for Ukraine, backed not by the British taxpayer, but by the profits from frozen Russian assets. It is my pleasure to bring from His Majesty the King a letter. He sent his best wishes and his regards, of course, but he also asked me to bear this letter and bring it to you. So can I present the letter from the King to
Thank you very much. Am I supposed to read it right now?
Yeah, please do.
I will do.
I've got to tell him what your reaction is, so I need to know. I need to know.
He is a great gentleman. A great, great gentleman. He said he thinks the war's going to go on for a long time, and he better not be right. Well, I just think he should be more appreciative, because this country has stuck with them through thick and thin. We've given them much more than Europe, and Europe should have given more than us, because as you know, that's right there, that's the border.
What kind of diplomacy, JD, you are speaking about? What do you mean?
I'm talking about the kind of diplomacy that's going to end the destruction of your country.
Yes, but if you
Mr. President, with respect, I think it's disrespectful for you to come into the Oval Office and try to litigate this in front of the American media.
You're gambling with the lives of millions of people. You're gambling with World War III. You're gambling with World War III.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to 3 minutes past 7. The sun is up, the blinds are down. That means it must be quite a bright old day out there here at the 17th floor of a News HQ and the World of Common Sense HQ, by the way, as well this morning. We are celebrating because finally, once again, as I predicted at the beginning of this year, on my first show in January, I said, you know, I believe this will be the year of common sense, the year that we row back a little bit on all the woke nonsense that we've been afflicted with over the course of time. We're going to be speaking to Sun journalist Noah Hoffman a little bit later on in the show. She actually put a tweet out yesterday saying that if she had even tried to suggest when she was at university just a few short years ago that a woman could never have a penis, she would have been hounded out of her academic year, she would have been hounded out of her academic class, she probably would have been banned from the university, and she probably wouldn't have been allowed to ever speak about it ever again. And it shows that we have at least made some progress despite the politicians of this country, not all of them just Labour, by the way, many of them Lib Dems, of course, some of them Conservatives even too, because we've even got Penny Mordaunt saying that a trans woman is a woman, and we'll play you that a little bit later on in the show. But finally, the Supreme Court, after 5 years, have deliberated and deliberated and deliberated and come up with what can only be described as complete and utter common sense, otherwise known as reality, that a biological woman is the only woman that can claim to be a woman. If you're born a biological man, you can never be a woman. It doesn't matter what you do, it doesn't matter how many pills you take, it doesn't matter how many hormones you inject into yourself, it doesn't matter how many operations you have. If you are not born a biological woman, I'm afraid you are not a woman. Makes perfect sense, doesn't it? We've also been talking about migrants this morning. 705 came over the other day, and it's going to be a very long, hot summer, and I think it can't be long before 1,000 migrants is the number that we reach on one single day. But apparently, despite the fact that you can bring in any number of migrants over the channel if you want, you can't bring a cheese sandwich. Let's get a voice note from Perry.
Morning, Mike. I was thinking about going to Europe, but I need to take some chicken nuggets with me because I don't like eating them from anywhere else. How do you think I'd stand if I took that case to the Court of Human Rights? Because I really want to go to Europe, but I just don't like their chicken nuggets.
Listen,
they'd help me out.
Perry, yeah, I can absolutely help you out. You can take the chicken nuggets in, you just can't bring them back. You know, because although in some places, some countries, you're allowed to bring chicken back. So maybe you'd be okay. Maybe you can actually transport the chicken nuggets there and back. But that would be stupid, wouldn't it? Like some of the policies of this government. 0344 499 1000. Meanwhile, the King has just issued his Easter message where he said Jesus' actions were a token of his love that knew no bounds or boundaries and is central to Christian belief. What's going on? You know, suddenly we've had an awakening. The rock has been removed from the tomb. Sorry, no, too soon for that. That happens a bit later on. Lazarus, of course, that was a story for those of you who've forgotten your Bible classes. We've got so much going on. Ed Sheeran is just as influential, according to Time magazine, as Keir Starmer. Probably a better singer as well, to be fair. What is it? 6 minutes past 7. I'm Mike Graham. Let's get it on. Alien life as well. Blimey, you know, we'd forgotten about that almost. It's only been an hour. Apparently there's alien life on a planet far, far away, which is called K218b, which is my producer, Christian Sell. He thinks it's his postcode. I'm not sure. K218b, apparently the discovery on planet K218b is enormous and shocking. This has been discovered by people in Cambridge University. E.T. Sleuths, it says on the front page of The Sun. Planet of the Plankton. So we'll get more into that a little bit later on. Let's talk now, that's Fiona McAnina, Director of Campaigns at Sex Matters, because an historic victory for women is what it's being called on the front pages this morning. And indeed, it is an historic victory for women. Trans women are not women. It's that simple. In other words, trans women are men. Fiona, very good morning to you.
Good morning.
I hope you haven't got too much of a hangover, because it was quite a day yesterday, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was a huge day. It was the result that we and others have been campaigning for years, and it gives us a platform now to restore proper policies that give us back privacy and decency and dignity in all the places where single-sex provision matters. You know, we've always said sometimes it doesn't matter, but when sex does matter, it does mean biology. It means what you're born, male or female. And it's just an insult to have had to go all this way in order to win back a recognition that the rest of us knew all the time. And I should say it's the Campaign Group for Women Scotland who brought this case. And then we as Sex Matters were an intervener, as were a lesbian group. And collectively, those contributions are what made the difference here.
Yes. And of course, the case was brought against the Scottish Government. And I mean, I don't know what that means for the Scottish Government, but there's a lot of interesting conversations now being had around various organisations like the NHS, like the judiciary, like prisons, like, like the police, and lots of other sort of what you might call, gender fluid organisations who have for a long time been very, very critical of anyone who wouldn't say that a trans woman could be a woman. And so where does that all go now?
Well, they all have to look hard at their policies now, because all this nonsense about it's difficult, it's complicated, you know, we have to treat people in the gender they identify as, that can all be swept aside. And the law never really required them to do all that.
Right.
Just did it. But now the Supreme Court, the highest court in the land, has said, no, it's very simple. The Equality Act, where it says woman, it means a female person, it means how you're born. So those people will all have to look at their policies. We should see the end of, for example, changing rooms where people say, well, you identify in where you like.
Yes.
You know, that's currently the subject of 2 court cases involving the NHS. There was already law about the workplace, of course. Yeah. Changing rooms were already supposed to be single sex. So this Equality Act stuff has really swept through everything, and everyone lost their mind over it. And hopefully now we can get back to really what most people wanted all along.
Yes. I mean, I heard a lot of callers yesterday calling this station and saying, you know, for most people, this is not an issue. You know, we are living in what used to be a very tolerant country. I like to think that we still do live in a tolerant country, and I don't have any problem with anybody who wants to live in any sort of different way that they wish. But it's just the kind of the people who were pushing this, you know, need for legislation, this need for kind of, you know, acceptance, this need for the rest of the majority of the country to actually somehow admit that men could be women, and that therefore they should be allowed to play women's sports, they should be allowed to gain access to women's changing rooms and go to women's prisons and all of that. You know, that's where it started to get troublesome, wasn't it?
Yes, it's not about how people want to live their lives, it's about the negative impact on other people when they insist that, you know, their view of the world and their view of themselves is the one that's real, the one that matters, and other people's preferences and boundaries don't count. And it's a very simple principle all over the world that sometimes sex does matter. It matters in healthcare, for example. Yeah. It matters anywhere, particularly where women are in a state of undress or vulnerability. You mentioned sport. Of course, sport is played by bodies and not identities. And so the idea that we all have to keep stum and pretend that these men have become women is frankly insulting. And I will say that although the mood is extremely positive, and there was indeed considerable celebrating last night, people are still angry, and especially women are angry that they had to do this. You know, we have, all of us collectively, fundraised hundreds of millions of pounds for this case and for others. People have risked their jobs. Women in particular have lost their jobs. So the government hasn't been doing its job. You know, the government said there isn't a problem. Well, clearly there was a problem. So,
well, I mean, so many members of this government in particular, and I'm thinking of David Lammy, I'm thinking of Keir Starmer, I'm thinking of, you know, Yvette Cooper, so many of the senior members, Rachel Reeves probably as well, so many senior members of this cabinet struggled to identify what a woman was and found it a really embarrassing question. They used to say things like, oh, well, we don't want to have this debate. It's a very difficult, complicated issue. Well, it isn't, is it?
It's a very simple issue, and just because they don't like it, they now cannot avoid it. And that's the reason I think people are so delighted. We've got this simple, clear answer that we all knew all along, Mike. There are men, there are women. You can't change that. Sometimes you can't ignore it.
Exactly right. And I said this yesterday on Talk. I was on Jeremy Carl's show. I think Keir Starmer, actually, who's missing in action right now because he's apparently taking a holiday, despite the fact that there's quite a lot going on that maybe he should be addressing. He said nothing so far about this ruling, but as a lawyer, right, he makes a big deal about the fact that, you know, he's a lawyer, he believes in the legal framework, he believes in his time as a prosecutor in the CPS. He was a very ardent prosecutor of wrongdoing. He was a man that knew the letter of the law and acted upon it and only acted upon it. What he should surely say now is that the law now says that a woman is a woman only if she's born a biological woman, and a trans woman is not a woman. And I was wrong to say that was incorrect in the past. He needs to come out and say that, doesn't he?
Well, we'll see what he has to say. What we're most interested in is that organisations are forced now to follow the law and to restore the kind of protections and policies that we used to have, so that everyone can live within the peace and, you know, dignity and that we expect. The trans lobby has talked about their wish for just to get on with their lives and live quietly and with dignity, but that's not how this played out. and the price was paid mostly by women and also by children who, were victims of the kind of pressures of believing that you could be in the wrong body. Women in particular having to share private spaces with men. So we want to see the politicians come out with a very clear statement that says, yes, sex matters. This is where it matters. The Equality Act makes clear when you can and you should provide single-sex services and spaces, and now we want to see everyone do that.
Right. And what is the legal position now then, as far as you are concerned, with regard to sport? Because a lot of elite sports have sort of seen sense and have decided that, women can only play in women's sports if they are biological women, but not all of them. But certainly a lot of people tell me that the grassroots levels are actually worse in terms of the numbers of men, frankly, or boys who are allowed to play sport as women.
Yeah, it's terrible at grassroots level, because that's a really meaningless distinction. What that is an admission of is that it really does matter in sport, that it is not fair to let boys or men play in women's sport, but somehow most women don't matter. Right. Only the ones making a living out of it. So what this means for sport is the law was already pretty clear and sports bodies just weren't acting on it. So this gives us a lever now to say, right, you cannot claim that the law requires you to do this. And of course, the other big thing is what happens off the playing field, because, what you do in competition is one thing, but if you come off the hockey pitch or the football field or whatever, and you go into a changing room, and as a woman, you find there's a man in there, it's very off-putting.
Yes.
So, swimming is another area where it's not competitive sport, so it's been very ambiguous under the law. And a lot of women are horrified by having to share swimming changing rooms and indeed female-only swim sessions with men who say they're women. So this gives us really the best possible rationale to push harder.
So if anyone finds themselves in a situation, and I'm thinking just of ordinary families here, who maybe may have a daughter who wants to, be a swimmer, but in her school or in her swimming club, there are boys swimming as women, will they be entitled to say to those people organising such events, you're breaking the law?
If those events have been billed as being women only or female only, then yes, it's a false promise. No one has to organise single-sex activities, but if they do organise them, or if they put a sign that says female on the door of the changing room, they're making a promise to you, and they're relying on the Equality Act. And in the Equality Act, that means based on your body and based on how you were born. So yes, they will have a basis to say you've got this wrong. But I think we're all going to have to do a lot of talking and a lot of letter writing to get people to understand that self-ID, letting a man just identify as a woman, is not the law. It never has been.
Yes.
And yet we've had it in place. But now this ruling gives us every opportunity to push hard. And we'll be creating resources on our website, sexmatters.org, to help people make those claims.
Right. And what about pronouns? Will those be now done away with? I mean, will people still go they, them, he, her, she, him, whatever it is? Ha ha.
Well, one of the things the judges said is that gender reassignment is the characteristic in the Equality Act that protects people who say that they are not the sex they were born. And that's always been the case. And they shouldn't be discriminated against or harassed. And again, that's always been the case, and that's as it should be. If a workplace wants to decide that, pronouns are essential, that's a bit borderline, because they're imposing that belief on their workers. But at the same time, if you go around, being offensive or abusive to colleagues, then an employer may take issue with that. And that's why pronouns have been such a contested area, because if the trans lobby say that that's deeply hurtful and offensive, the minute you call someone or refer to someone as you see them, by the correct pronouns. So I think that's going to be still a bit of a battleground. This law doesn't say that you can and you must always speak correctly and accurately about someone. Thankfully, they didn't say anything about pronouns.
No. Well, we'll wait and see, I guess, how it all washes out in the next few days. But thank you, as ever, Fiona, for the campaign, at least. And thank you for joining us this morning. Fiona McAnina, Director of Campaigns at Sex Matters. Just in case you think that it's only Labour MPs, by the way, that had this madness sort of inflicted upon them, check out what Penny Mordaunt said a couple of years ago.
But let me say, in proposing them from this dispatch box, that trans men are men, trans women are women.
No, they're not. I'm afraid that's entirely wrong. The judges in the Supreme Court have ruled that you, Penny, will have to refine that view and actually come up with the conclusion that men, trans women, are not in fact women, they're actually men. Now that the courts have been good enough to explain to us what a woman is, can we now go back to having a man of the match in football on TV like we had before this madness was thrust upon us, says Paul. No player of the match, man of the match. And Don in Chelmsford says, Mike, isn't it amazing that President Trump announced that there are only two sexes? Meanwhile, in La La Land, UK, it took judges many years to reach the same conclusion. I think so. And Deborah in Yorkshire says, first question at the next PMQs to the PM, what is a woman? Great show. That would be great, wouldn't it? Imagine if Kemi Badenoch got up and just said to Keir Starmer, first question, what is a woman? I'd love to see that. Let's get a voice note from Brian.
Mike, Brian Southend, going on the Easter holidays and all that. You know, my take, do you remember, you're about the same age as me, I'm 63. Remember on Sundays and all that, we used to get all that programmes on the BBC, songs of praise, and on Easter Sunday you used to get about 3 hours in the morning of the church, doing their service and all that, with all the dignitaries there, the King, the Prime Minister and all that. And you used to think, oh God, not this, why can't we put banana splits or something on? But don't you really wish for that to come back now? And you think, God, we really need that back.
Yeah, absolutely right. Brian, the world hasn't changed that much, but Britain has changed incredibly since the time when you and I used to wake up on a Sunday morning and even go to church. That's what we used to do in my childhood. If I was an altar boy, in fact, until I was about 11 or 12. Mike, I have a wife, says Kevin, Shropshire, 2 daughters and a lovely 22-month-old granddaughter, and was fearful for the future for them. The world looks a lot better today, a bit better today after yesterday's decision. I was and I'm still angry that our elite, our establishment let this nonsense happen. Women are born women, identify as whatever you like, but you're a woman or a man, that's it. Exactly right. Well, I put a tweet out yesterday when the ruling came in and just went, the end, because it is the end. It's straightforward. It's what we know. It's what we see. It's what we absolutely and utterly, in our hearts, know is the right way to live, right? And it's just normal. And I know people don't like that word. Oh, you can't say the word normal. That means you're sort of, you're making some people out not to be normal. Yeah, well, maybe that's right. Maybe it is. 7:20.
We've both done our weekly check. Apparently, we still haven't grown our penis. I don't know if you want to do your check and see whether you've grown yours or not, but what's your message to the Prime Minister, who apparently thinks that some of us have penises?
Well, I would just echo the message of the highest court in the land and the top judges in the land. And by the way, there were 2 women, Lady Simler and Lady Rose, on that panel, and they were both there today. The judgment was read, the 2 judgments on 2 cases were read by the President and Vice President, but the 2 lady judges were there too. It doesn't really matter what the Prime Minister thinks about this.
across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:23. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through, of course, until the hour of 10 o'clock when Julie Hartley-Brewer will be along. We've been talking this morning an awful lot about the front pages because equality policies in chaos, it says on the front page of the Times. Courts define what a woman is. Campaigners held victory for biological sex, and it was a fantastic day for women, as we just heard from our last guest, Fiona McAnina. But it will cause a lot of problems, I would think, for quite a few organisations, and certainly for the Labour Party, and certainly for this government. Because let's face it, Keir Starmer for a long time could never actually find a reason to actually explain what a woman was. Have a look at this little compilation put together by Kemi Badenoch.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right.
In 2021, you said that MP Rosie Duffield was wrong to say that only women have a cervix. In the next year, asked to define a woman in an interview in the Times, you said a woman is a female adult. In addition to that, trans women are women. Later that month, you said in an LBC phone-in, well, you just simply refused to answer the question of whether a woman can have a penis. And finally, in 2023, you said that for 99% of women, their gender is completely biological, and of course, they haven't got a penis.
So a woman can have a penis?
Nick, I'm not... I don't think we can conduct this debate with, you know...
Sorry, have I offended you in some way?
No, it's just...
Look at the pain on his face. I mean, the pain of it all. Oh, God, you know. And when he was being quizzed there on this morning, where he can't actually bring himself to do anything but just have this kind of static face of going... When he's being, you know, talking about women, we can't go there. Difficult. It's not difficult, is it? David Maddox is here. First, though, let's get Mark on his holidays.
Morning, Mike. Great show as always. This is Mark from Derby. Just ringing you because I'm looking forward to going to Torremolinos this Easter weekend. And it's National Lookalike Weekend. I don't know if you knew that, but that should be interesting for me and my family because my partner looks like Siobhan Finneran of Benidorm fame, the mother in the family in Benidorm. I once got mistaken for Ross Kemp when I was down in Brighton. They were filming EastEnders. My kids call me Gru because I look like Gru from Minions fame. And also, my missus always teases me saying I look like Wallace from Wallace and Gromit. I can't win, but I'm looking forward to my holidays. Great show, Mike.
Don't bring any ham back, is all I can say. Mark, thanks very much for that. I'm not quite sure what the point of that was, but anyway, we enjoyed it. Listen, it's all human life is here. You're very welcome to send in voice notes about where you go on your holidays, particularly over the Easter break, which, of course, the Prime Minister himself has taken some time off for. David, very good morning to you.
Morning, Mike. How are you?
Yeah, very well indeed. Good to talk to you. This is a big day, a great day. Yesterday, of course, was a celebration for an awful lot of women and a terrible day for an awful lot of parliamentarians and politicians who, for many, many years, were very frightened of being asked the question, what is a woman?
Well, and not just the political world, but the entire corporate world, by the looks of it, over the last few years. Look, the women who've fought this campaign have been very brave. You know, a lot of them have faced losing their jobs and being excluded. I mean, it's been dreadful, actually.
But it has. I mean, we've had people ringing up this station to say they've been arrested by the police for making some remark about the fact that trans women are not women.
And frankly, I think this is this is part of the problem. It is a fact that it was driven so far and to such an extreme that the entire debate got toxified in the way it did. I mean, I suppose it's no surprise to anybody really that the judges actually were. It could have been one of the most complicated legal decisions they had to make yesterday. You know, but the fact that we had to go this far to find out what a woman is and ask a judge it does seem kind of extraordinary. But
it does seem mad, doesn't it? But there's now, I mean, it's sort of the beginning of the next phase in a way, isn't it? Because there's been a couple of MPs who've come out, and particularly Green Party MPs, a couple of Labour MPs come out and said, you know, we don't recognise this, we stand by trans women, blah, 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 blah. I mean, they have to recognise it, and I've been saying since yesterday, Keir Starmer, as the sort of lawyer-in-chief of this country, surely has to come out and say something about it as well. I mean, I know he's away, but surely for a man who couldn't identify what a woman was, and a man who spends his entire life telling us how much of a lawyer he is and how much he lives by a legal framework, surely he should come out now and say, this is now the law, and I will be promulgating it at every possible opportunity. So it's now very clear to me that a woman is only a woman if she was born a biological woman.
You would have thought so, and frankly, I think Keir Starmer probably will. I mean, he's got a reputation for accepting legal judgments and demanding others do so as well.
Yes, exactly. So he can't walk away from this. He can't walk away from this, can he? He's going to have to acknowledge it. And as somebody said to me, it'd be great, wouldn't it? The first Prime Minister's questions after Easter recess. The first question is, what is a woman?
I would imagine Kemi Badenoch is already polishing up that question, frankly. But
yes.
You know, it's going to be an interesting one because, of course, what will happen now is that there will be pressure to change the law.
Yes.
Again. And this is far from over as a debate. And you know, there are trans women who need some sort of protection and some sort of recognition. The issue has always been to what degree, and to you know, in a way that doesn't put people at risk, put women, biological women at risk. I mean, you know, the fact that we ended up having debates about whether to send rapists to women's prisons, really, I don't think that helped anybody on either side of the argument. Frankly.
No, it was absolutely nothing ridiculous.
This is the problem.
Yeah, absolutely right. Let's talk about a couple of other things, though, before I let you go. Story this morning in the Telegraph saying, the Times, Starmer's EU net zero deal to drive up energy bills. I mean, I'm not sure energy bills can get any bigger or higher, but apparently Keir Starmer wants to join up with some kind of European Union net zero scheme, which is going to put prices up even more.
Well, he promised to take £500 off our bills.
I remember that.
I mean, I'm still waiting.
Yeah, frankly. I think you'll be waiting a long time because even poor old Red Ed, or Jet Ed as he's now called, Miliband, seems to think that might be some way off.
Yeah, but I mean, but we've just seen this play out in the last week or so with British Steel, the real consequences of it. It's not just hitting us in our homes, but it's hitting businesses and industry in this country. You know, it'd be very hard to maintain some of these big kind of industrial businesses and complexes if energy costs so much, and you know, if they're going to end up driving prices up even further, then I'm afraid, you know, Keir Starmer's probably going to be on a bit of a sticky wicket in a few years' time.
Yeah, I think so. I don't understand why he's trying to get aligned closer to Brussels either, but there we are. David, thank you very much indeed. David Maddox, political editor of The Independent there, with his take on the decision yesterday about trans women who are no longer to be regarded as women by law, according to the Supreme Court. Coming up, we're going to speak to the Unite Union. Onai Kassab is here. He's the National Lead Officer. We'll get the latest from him and what's going on with the Birmingham bin strike. Somebody else in his union this morning has blamed Angela Rayner for the nightmare that goes on in Britain's second city. This is Talk.
across the UK. On DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:33. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until, of course, 10 o'clock. Will the Isle of Man be proud again of being called the Isle of Man once more, says Tony. Nefertati says, Mike, will this transgender ruling help the nurse who was suspended because she called a man and not a woman? Well, it should do. I mean, all those cases should now collapse. Similarly, with the one where the women were going to court to protect their changing room from a trans woman who wanted to change in there in the NHS. Tim in Suffolk, news alert for all parents. Easter Bunny has started industrial action. Well, we did actually find out over the course of the last 24 hours that there might be some industrial action at Gatwick Airport over the course of Easter weekend because there's still talks going on which could result in a strike. Kenny from Edinburgh says, hi Mike, the Supreme Court has played an absolute blinder with its ruling. What trans activists always ignore is that equality has to be equal for everybody. I'm sick of rights for a tiny wee number of the population controlling everything that the vast majority do. I think it's been a very big day for common sense, and it's a victory, I think, for common sense, and I think anyone sensible would agree with that. Let's talk now to Onai Kassab. He's National Lead Officer at Unite Union. Onai, very good morning.
Good morning.
Good to talk to you. Thanks very much indeed for joining us. What's the latest situation? We were reading this morning that one of your colleagues, I think, I haven't got her name in front of me, is saying this is all Angela Rayner's fault.
Well, the situation at the moment is that we entered into talks with the council yesterday. We've gone to those talks with a number of ways that this dispute can be resolved. Unfortunately, the council turned up with nothing. And when I say nothing, I don't mean that what they put forward was so poor that it amounted to nothing. I mean they actually turned up with nothing.
What, no offer of any kind?
Correct, exactly.
Right.
So, look, as far as blaming Angela Rayner is concerned, I think the general point here is that governments over years bear the responsibility for austerity in local government, and we all know that local authorities are facing massive pressure, and there is a role for the government to play on that. Unfortunately, Angela Rayner over the last week or so has been demanding that Unite put proposals to our members to vote, or that we just accept what's on the table. But there isn't anything on the table. Yesterday, the leader of Birmingham City Council said that nobody needs to lose any money. Fine. Put that to us as a proposal, detailing how nobody's going to lose any money, and we'll be further forward. Look, we've been told previously in negotiations that now drivers will have their pay dropped from £40,000 to £32,000. If the leader wants to say that's not going to happen, that will take us forward.
Yeah. I mean, how is it so difficult to make these things sort of work somehow? Because, you know, people are watching from around the world now, looking at Birmingham, looking at the videos of all the rats running around, looking at how ludicrous, you know, a properly modern country like Britain can get. If you don't, something as simple as your bins getting emptied, it doesn't work for a couple of weeks. And I mean, it really must be, I haven't been up there. I don't know whether you've been up there. Have you been up there recently?
I have. I spend a lot of time in Birmingham at the moment trying to...
I mean, it must be horrible. Tell us what have you seen? I mean, what have you smelled? I mean, people told me they can smell it from the motorway.
Well, it is not pleasant. Absolutely. It is awful. It's a public health risk. We accept all of that. But I think it doesn't need to happen. That's the frustrating thing for us. If the council come forward with the proposals that back up what the leader said yesterday, then this can be resolved tomorrow, and for us that's the frustrating thing.
One of the reports I read was saying that about 130 bin men have accepted what is being offered by the council, and there's only something like 40 or so who have not. Is that right?
No, it's not. I mean, there's an awful lot of playing about with figures, unfortunately, and that's not helping matters. That the council for a while was saying it's only 17 people. Yesterday it went up to 40. Now they'll go up again soon. But here's the point. Look, there are, I think, 203 vehicles that leave the depots. I'm guessing that means that there are 203 drivers. All of those drivers face a pay cut based on what we've been told in negotiations. So the council can play about with numbers all they want, but let's look at resolving it. Let's deal with it. The leader said yesterday nobody needs to lose any pay. Put in writing how that's going to happen, and that will take us forward.
And as far as the council's sort of coffers are concerned, I mean, one of the reasons they haven't got any money is not just because of austerity, it's because of the mismanagement, is it not, of the way the council budget was run, and the fact that so much money had to be paid out to make up for previous inequalities between men and women, you know, and that sort of, you know, the Tony Blair inspired, you know, Equality Act. And so, you know, it's by their own hand that they can't afford to pay you. It's their fault, isn't it?
Mike, you're absolutely right. There has been huge mismanagement at Birmingham City Council from for instance, the buildings around the Commonwealth Games, about the mismanagement of those and the losses around that as well. So absolutely, there's been huge mismanagement. And I think the reason why our members are so angry is that our members are being asked to pay for that. We talk about equal pay, and the council have talked about that as well. That is mismanagement. We wouldn't have equal pay issues if the council had been paying women properly. Why should hard-working public service workers, and what we've seen in Birmingham is the importance of the job that these people do. The refuse service isn't just men, by the way. There are women who work in the refuse service as well when we talk about equal pay issues. We've seen how vital the job is that they do. Why should they have their pay cut to just above national minimum wage levels?
And so, I mean, I'm also told that parts of Birmingham, the streets are actually not as filthy as other parts of Birmingham. Is that also true?
That is the case. Yeah, that is the case.
And why is that then?
Well, the council probably needs to answer that question, but I can give a guess myself. There are areas that the council will prioritise, and that will be, the reasons for that will be down to the council itself. And there's no doubt that areas that perhaps are less well off will have had fewer options about how they can get rid of their rubbish.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because, I mean, you might level all manner of accusations at the council, but there's certainly a problem with your relations, aren't there? I mean, they've been broken down now for a long time. I think last time you and I spoke, you said you've been involved in some kind of industrial action since January.
That's correct. In Birmingham, that's been absolutely the case. And the point there is that it didn't have to come to all-out industrial action. We didn't go indefinitely at the start of this. We got involved in negotiations. The indefinite action only started when the council decided it was going to push ahead regardless. And it only started after our members had already agreed to take a pay cut of £1,000 a year. What that shows is that we're willing to make real, genuine concessions, not just talk, but real, genuine concessions.
So what's the offer now for the next meeting? Is there an offer for another meeting?
Well, the council have said that they'll meet us on Wednesday of next week. Our position...
Next week?
There you go. Exactly, Mike. Which is why my position is that we are ready to meet. And for those of us who are old enough to remember the Martini advert, anytime, any place, anywhere, over the bank holiday weekend isn't a problem. We will sit down.
You don't charge triple time for that, do you, if you meet them on the bank holiday weekend?
Me? Absolutely not. It's 24/7 with no overtime rates for me. Absolutely not. But the reality is this. We will meet them anytime that they want to, anywhere. Let's sit down. Let's get this resolved. But look, when they come to the table, my appeal is this. I want them to come to the table with something. Don't come empty-handed. Let's get this resolved.
Yeah. And are you willing to make any concessions from your current position?
Yeah, yes, and we already have. When we've met with the council, we've put forward how this could be resolved with us making concessions. Look, I don't want to give away too much of what would be discussed in negotiations, but key areas for us, for instance, are, look, how can we protect the pay of the drivers? Because that's simply not acceptable. If people are going to be moved to other positions within the council, then, okay, they may move, but let's make sure they're not out the frying pan and into the fire. We need to make sure that they're being moved into jobs where they are not going to face the same thing happening within a few months' time. So we're willing to look at concessions, more concessions, if you like, than the ones we've given already, but we need movement from the council. The key here is that the leader has already said there need not be anybody taking a pay cut. Put that in writing. That gives our drivers that reassurance. That takes us forward.
And what about suggestions of a summer of discontent that have been doing the rounds this week? Some suggesting that your union might be involved in other industrial activity in other parts of the country. Cambridge has been mentioned, Yorkshire's been mentioned, Sheffield specifically has been mentioned. Is there something going on in Sheffield?
There is something going on in Sheffield, yes. That's where the council of the Veolia provide the service on behalf of the council. It's a contracted out service, and where we're not even able to negotiate paying conditions because Veolia is refusing to recognise the trade union that the workers want to be a part of, that the workers want representing them. Right. So there is strike action in Sheffield at the moment. Right. As far as a summer of discontent, it's not something that we are looking for. However, if local authorities are going to be doing what Birmingham have been doing, then it's not going to be a surprise when people stand up and say, we are not going to be accepting pay cuts to pay for mistakes that are not our problem, and we will stand by those members. We make no apology for that.
Right. So there could be a summer of discontent, is what you're saying?
If local authorities move ahead and repeat what's done in Birmingham, then yes, that is a possibility.
Yeah. Well, we wish you luck with it, because obviously the people of Birmingham need rescuing from the rats. And, you know, it would be nice if something could be done before the bank holiday weekend. We'll see if we can get Birmingham Council to come to the table. We'll give them a call and see what we can do. Onay, thanks very much indeed for talking to us. Onay Kassab, the National Lead Officer at Unite Union, confirming that there is indeed industrial action going on in Sheffield. So the bins are not being emptied there, and it could spread. He's obviously quite happy to throw the gauntlet down to these councils who, if they're not willing to pay, are basically going to be facing strike action. It's that simple. Coming up, we're going to talk about the discovery of intelligent life somewhere else. Not on this planet, obviously. This is Talk.
Have uncertainty, and being designed and being called a landlord is a dirty word. Sure. Then of course, you know, because we have a housing shortage, and of course only, what was it, last month, the 1.5 million target went down to 1.3. Yep. And of course we don't have a work skills. We've talked about this. There is, you know, someone that's lived and breathed this for the best part of 34, 35 years from being in the legal profession and setting up Landlord Action 25 years ago, and I am a landlord. I tell it how it is. And I get decent landlords to say to me, Paul, I've had enough. Yeah. And they're good landlords, and they care about their tenants.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 7:48. I'm Mike Graham. Kevin in Stafford says this. Wednesday next week is the first day back for council workers in Brum. They've always had 3 days off over Easter, Good Friday, Easter Monday and the Tuesday. Yours is an ex-Birmingham resident, thank God. Kevin the Red from Stafford. Blimey, imagine that. Oh yeah, we're very happy to sort out the bins crisis. You know, as the bins pile up, as the rubbish piles up, 15, 20 feet high, rats running everywhere. We'll have a meeting in about 6 days from now. Unbelievable stuff. Did I hear that guy say council staff were paid £40,000 for driving slowly? How is that value for us taxpayers, says Wayne. Well, I suppose they'll say that, they've negotiated that fee. They deserve what money they're being paid. And certainly if you were on £40,000, you wouldn't want to take a pay cut to 32, would you? Maybe some of these Supreme Court judges could join the ECHR, says Emma in Kent. That's a very good idea, isn't it? Let's get a voice note from Mark.
Morning, Mike. It's Mark in Lancashire. The thing that I'm most angry about in all this was when you had a male rapist or a male paedophile. There's recently been one in the Daily Mirror, a bloke with purple hair, I'm not going to say his name, clearly a man with a beard. They said in the article that he was a woman, that he'd been doing things disgusting, and he was clearly a man. So this Supreme Court ruling now clarifies what the law has always been. It doesn't just change the law going forward, it clarifies what the law has always been, that a trans woman is not a man and was never a man. So can stories like this, can these newspapers now be legally liable for printing falsehoods, for lying? That's what I want to know. And I hope they get sued. I really do.
Well, it's a good question. I don't know what the position would be legally, but we'll find out. I'm sure we'll get some legal definition of how you're supposed to report court cases. But, of course, you've got to remember that mostly the newspapers that report those court cases are reporting the court cases as the court cases are being carried out. So in the court, if the person is being referred to as a woman, then that's what they're reporting. Now, you can say they shouldn't report that, but if it's technically speaking, if you're a court reporter, you report what's said in the court, and that's what happens. But I imagine that will now change because of the new law. But we wait and see. As I say, there's several kind of ramifications for all of this stuff, which we'll get into over the course of the next few weeks. Let's talk, though, now about something far more fascinating in a way. Dr. David Whitehouse is here, astronomer and science writer, because there's a new planet out there. It's called K2-18b. It doesn't sound terribly romantic. One message I've got here from Glenn in Leeds says, if this new planet just found is full of plankton, it should be called the planet of the planks, shouldn't it? I think I'll avoid it. The Sun's got a big graphic on pages 4 and 5. Dr. David, very good morning to you.
Morning.
So we've got this big planet, which is slightly bigger than the Earth, we understand, a very, very long way away, so many light years away, 120 light years away, I think. And possibly covered in water. It's quite a fascinating discovery, right?
Yes, we've known about 18b for many years, and it is a fascinating world. And it's remarkable that using the James Webb Space Telescope, we can actually get some information about the atmosphere of this planet.
Right.
As you say, it's larger than the Earth. It might be an ocean planet. It might be a gaseous planet. It orbits a very dim star called red dwarf, much fainter than our sun, but it orbits close in, so it gets about the same amount of radiation as the Earth does. So it's possible to have liquid water on its surface.
Right.
And what we've seen today is confirmation of what we suspected a couple of years ago, of a very interesting molecule in the atmosphere, which is if you call a biomarker, which is a hint that this molecule, which on Earth is produced by life, might be doing the same on this other world. It's a hint, that's all, right. A suggestion, and there may be other explanations for it, but it is a fascinating step along the line of finding life in space.
Yes, and I mean, how much do you know, or do we know about the nature of the water on the planet? I mean, would it be in the form of oceans like we have? Would there be land masses as well? Is it just water?
Well, because this is a much larger world than ours, it might be like Uranus. It might be a gaseous planet,
right.
But there is some people believe it is a water world. Therefore, it would be presumably completely water. The water would be full of chemicals, full of carbon dioxide, and it'd be fizzy in many respects, and it would be warm.
Yeah.
And when you have warm water, a stable environment, then on Earth, water is associated with the development of life. So it is it is, if you like, circumstantial.
Yeah.
This would be a fascinating so-called a Hycean world, very different from ours, very different from anything we've known.
Yeah.
But, you know, when we look out into space for signs of life, sure, we can look at what we know. We can look for life like we find on planet Earth, which is the only place where we know there is life. But we also have to look for other environments because, as the saying goes, life can find a way.
I mean, one of the descriptions is that it could be teeming with life. There may be plankton. There could also be sort of mammals, perhaps, in the water.
Yeah. Your speculation can go wild, yes. I mean, if the signal of this interesting molecule, which is quite strong now, it's definitely there, then perhaps it indicates that there is a lot of life there to produce the gas that we can detect. Perhaps it's being produced naturally by some other means. You can imagine all sorts of scenarios. So, you know, 18b might be just a fascinating world with interesting unknown chemistry, or it might just be the first hint of life out there in space. We're going to need a telescope actually stronger than the James Webb Space Telescope. The next one is called the Habitable Worlds Observatory, which will get a much closer look at worlds such as this.
And the James Webb Space Telescope, I understand, is currently almost 1 million miles from Earth.
Yeah.
I mean, how much further can you send something like that? And I know this might sound like a really stupid question, but how actually far away is this 18b planet, and what's beyond it?
Well, this is one of the closest planets to our solar system, you know, just over 100 light years away. That is peanuts to space. That is very, very close indeed. In fact, most of the worlds close to our sun are not like our sun at all. They are these red dim dwarfs.
Right.
And in fact, we believe that red dim dwarfs is a very interesting place to look for life because there are so many of these worlds, and they have what's called a habitable zone, just like the Earth is in around our star. So it may well be that when we find evidence of life, it's not around a star such as ours, but the fact is that we have a hint of life on a planet relatively nearby, although the James Webb cannot carry these observations out for objects very much further away. You know, very close together, this part of the galaxy could indicate that the universe is teeming with galaxies. And since we know that around most of the stars in the sky, most of the stars in the galaxy, there are planets, this is a very hopeful search indeed.
It's mind-blowing, isn't it? I mean, and without wishing to get too philosophical about it, can we be sure that we are the most sort of developed form of life, I suppose, in the solar system, do you think?
Well, in the solar system, certainly. We have no evidence of any intelligent life anywhere in our solar system.
There's not a lot of it down here, to be honest, is there?
Exactly. But, I mean, we've no evidence of any primitive forms of life, although the sands of Mars or the subterranean oceans of Enceladus and moons of Saturn might give us primitive forms of life. But sure, if we find intelligent life out there in space, then it's very unlikely that they would be as dumb or as young as we are. We would find the ancients. And the question is, would they, having been around for a long time, would they take notice of us? Would they want to communicate with us? Would they be cosmic princes of peace who would tell us how to solve our problems? Or would they be nasty invaders? No human knows the answer to that question.
That could be quite terrifying, I suppose, as well, because, you know, like all of our science fiction nightmares, you know, there's a much more intelligent form of life out there which wants to somehow come and feed off the planet. I'm sure that's a plot from some movie that I've seen, and just sort of move on, you know?
Yeah, lots of movies. It is interesting. We should have the discussion actually more about what happens if we find intelligent life in space, because it may happen tomorrow. It may never happen. But it's an assumption that this would be good. I mean, I don't think they'd come to eat us, but they may have had 1 billion years of evolution to actually not like things like us. So we may find intelligent life, and it would be one of the greatest discoveries ever made. It would shake our philosophy, our science, our religion. It would be an amazingly profound discovery to put us into context in the universe. But it might also be one of the most dangerous things we've ever done.
Wow. What a story, and fantastic stuff. Dr. David Whitehouse, thank you so much for talking to us, astronomer and science writer, putting it all into perspective for you there. Incredible, isn't it? Absolutely extraordinary. Nan in Wales says, Mike, imagine how high the water bills are on Planet Planck, and can we send our useless water company CEOs for your purely research info, of course. Yeah, absolutely right. Terry in Burview says, morning, Mike, this water world planet might just have gone through climate change, and Miliband was right. Yeah, you never know. Flooding everywhere. No, that's coming at the weekend, apparently. Let's get a voice note from Sean.
Morning, Mike. Sean from Grimsby here. Just wondering this morning if Keir Starmer still thinks that a woman can have a penis, or if David Lammy still thinks a man can grow a cervix, or is it, as I suspect, that neither of them believed his guff, they just said it anyway because they thought it was trendy. Great show, Mike.
Yeah, you have to wonder about that, don't you? And the weirdest thing about this whole story, right, is that Keir Starmer has not tweeted for nearly 24 hours. He hasn't mentioned the fact that this ruling has come through. He hasn't mentioned the fact that isn't it great or terrible that women are now only defined by being biological women. He's not said a word. He's on holiday, apparently. I've never seen him this quiet. What's going on? And where is he? Where is he? Come on, Starmer. Come and show your face. Come and tell us what you think. Come and tell us why you, as the main legal lawyer of this country, absolutely believe in the rule of law and a woman can only be born a woman. Come on, mate, get on with it.
How much, ladies and gentlemen, are fish and chips where you come from? We'll go to Jason in Crewe.
Jason from Crewe, fish, chips and peas, £7.50. The best chippy in England.
Janice in Leeds, go.
Regarding fish and chips in Leeds, it's between £9.50 and £12.75.
Whitby, how much is fish and chips?
3 of us, fish, chips, peas, I think one of us curry sauce, 3 cans of pop, just short of 70 quid.
£70? That's 23 quid a head, man. Even my maths does that. Very quickly, a voice note. Campbell in Scotland, go.
Up here in Banff in the northeast of Scotland, we can get a fillet and a half of haddock with a regular chips for £8 and 10 pence, and it's by far and away one of the best chippies I've ever had.
Kenneth in Surrey, fish and chips, go.
Fish and chips in Ascot, about half a mile from where you used to live, will cost you £12 and 60 pence. Great show. Keep up the good work.
That's why I moved, because you were living there. When was the last time you had fish and chips?
Couple of weeks ago.
How much? Where'd you get it from?
I think it was about 40 quid. It was in the Ivy.
Honestly, you really are. For any of you who think he's a man of the people, I nearly said you're a...
Keeping it real.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up to nearly 3 minutes past 8. I'm Mike Graham. The sun is up and the blinds are down up here at the top of the tower at News UK. And of course, the Home of Common Sense is right in the middle of it because I said in the beginning of January this will be the year of common sense. Ever since then, quite a lot of commonsensical things have happened. You might vary from me on that. You might have a different view, but certainly the ruling yesterday in the Supreme Court, I think the first time the Supreme Court's done anything that seemed like a good idea. I don't know. Peter Hitchens is coming up. He might have a different view of that because he's not keen on the fact that the Supreme Court was one part of the legacy of one Mr. Anthony Blair, who of course set up a whole bunch of different things so that he would have a legacy which went long into the future after he was no longer Prime Minister. But yesterday they came out with what everybody knew to be common sense, and which was, of course, the fact that a woman can only be born a biological woman and cannot suddenly become one just because a bloke wants to be recognised as a woman. It is no longer true that a trans woman is a woman, which unfortunately is bad news for practically all politicians who at one point or other have said that, because they've all been terrified of the trans lobby and terrified of the left wing of people in this country who would absolutely vindicate them, give them a hard time and point out that they were completely and utterly backward and wrong to even mention the fact that people might be able to change gender. That is now no longer a legal possibility. But where's Keir Starmer? Why has he not come out in the last 24 hours and said he welcomes the view of the Supreme Court, he welcomes the new law? He is, of course, you know, the legal master of this country. He keeps telling us that he is the man, only he, who is in charge of the legal framework of this country. He keeps wanting to change the law. He abides by the law. He was a prosecutor. He ran the CPS for many years. He knew exactly what to do because he alone is the sole arbiter of what is good law. Well, surely he must have a view on this, even if he is on holiday. I mean, he tweeted about cones the other day when he was on holiday. He doesn't want to tweet about women. Very strange. Let's get a voice note from James.
Morning, Mike. James from Blackburn. Yep, we're just slowly chipping away at it now, aren't we? You know, a bit of normality, yeah. Fellas are fellas, women are women. So, you know, all seems to be getting back to how it should be. The problem is, Mike, they went and just moved the goalposts on people. I mean, I always think, can you imagine dropping, like, me grandma, bless her, she'd have been 101. Can you imagine dropping her into the world now, going, hey, Gran, take a look at this? She'd be bewildered. But we're getting there. You're right. It's the year of common sense. I think I was your first voice note of 2025. We're getting there, Mike. We're just chipping away. Just need to get rid of old Sakia, and then we can, you know, start to have a bit more hope. Anyway, have a very happy Easter, Mike.
James, thank you very much indeed. Easter is indeed coming. It's Maundy Thursday. Good Friday tomorrow. Where's Keir Starmer? Let's get it on. Glyn says aliens have taken one look at us and discovered Keir Starmer, hence the quietness. They've thought, sod that, says Glyn. Well, very possibly so. Certainly there's an awful lot of questions about intelligent life and where you can find it, and not much of it can be found here on Earth. But, you know, we try to emanate it and sort of exude it here at the home of common sense and Morning Glory. Peter Hitchens is here, columnist at the Mail on Sunday. Peter, very good morning to you.
Morning.
It's not very often you wake up and discover intelligent or some kind of form of life on another planet far, far away, but it's not really the top story.
No, I have to say I'm very sceptical about these weird claims that people have found life on planets billions of miles away because some device has detected a gas which might conceivably be produced by the flatulence of shrimps. Or whatever it is. Right. It's like the constant struggle for to find water on Mars. You want to believe it, you believe it. I remain unconvinced.
Are you unconvinced in general?
Sorry?
I was going to say, are you unconvinced in general? I mean,
I'm unconvinced in general. I think the people want to believe this, so they give it more importance than it deserves. And there it is. I think we're a long way from finding Mr. Spock.
Yes, I suspect we are. But, I mean, I'm one of those people that's, I guess, an optimist when it comes to space. I just assume that one day we'll discover there is something out there which we can communicate with.
Well, do you want to? Are you sure?
Well, I don't know. But
are you absolutely sure that would be a nice thing?
I don't know. I'm not sure. But I'm quite fascinated by it.
I like the sound of that at all.
I think it's wrong. I think it would be wrong to presume there's nothing out there, though.
But it's wrong to presume anything that you don't know. But as I say, it's the enthusiasm to believe on the scantiest of evidence that I find.
No, I'm not going to strap myself. I'm not going to strap myself to a blue rocket, dress myself up in a blue tracksuit.
Well, I could say the same thing about this extraordinary rejoicing over the verdicts of the court, which oughtn't to exist, and which is an absolute assault on the Constitution in this country, on something which isn't really a matter of contention in the first place. I remember doing quite a long law course when I was on block release training as a young apprentice reporter in the 1970s, and one of the things that our law teacher said was Parliament in this country could do anything And he then said, except change a man to a woman, which used to be an accepted principle of law. There were things that it was beyond law and politics to alter. And the idea that you could actually alter by surgery or law one sex into another has always seemed to me to be extremely dubious, but also quite marginal in terms of our politics. Revolutions often take breathers. They go too far. They kill too many people. They destroy too many things. They make too big a mess, and then they take a breather and stop, only to return to pursuing the revolution in the normal way afterwards. I wouldn't get too worked up about this one. And as I say, the other thing about it is this: don't, whatever you do, ever accept that this country has a Supreme Court. The very title is both dishonest and aggressive. Parliament is supreme in our Constitution. There can be no Supreme Court, and calling it that has always been an outrage. And the best thing that happens to the Supreme Court would be that we eventually get a government that has the good sense to abolish it and returns to the previous system.
But in the meantime,
we should not have one. It's not in our Constitution to have lawyers deciding what the law is.
No, I would tend to agree with you. But by the same token, since it was the politicians that set up this ridiculous Supreme Court, they should be hoisted with their own petard, shouldn't they? Thereby, when the Supreme Court does something like this, which is commonsensical, regardless of whether you think it's right or not, it's obviously right. You know, we should make sure that they understand that this is the right thing that has happened. They've kind of kiboshed themselves in a way, because finally, I think this is the first time the Supreme Court's actually done anything sensible.
It's been quite interesting watching this controversy, which I actually think leaves most people completely cold and uninterested. But it's been quite interesting watching it, in that the supposed conservative right wing in this country has had to rely on several extremely articulate voices of quite brave but very otherwise left-wing people, such as Julie Bindel and Kathleen Stock, to make its case for it.
Yeah.
The actual political, cultural and moral right has been pretty much afraid to get involved in any of this at all. And now it's hiding behind the Supreme Court, which, as I say, is a radical revolutionary body which oughtn't to exist. I think you should learn more from that than that there's been a brief flash-in-the-pan supposed triumph.
Yes.
The most important thing about this is that it's meant more acceptance among people who should be against it for the Supreme Court, and they should be very wary of that. The Supreme Court is a device by which revolutionary leftists take over the government of this country and destroy what David Starkey has often pointed out, quite rightly, is proper parliamentary supremacy, which has been one of the main protections of liberty in this country for many centuries.
But this, in effect, will be a protector of liberty, this particular decision, even though you might not think it's as important as you're saying, because we've been hearing from people up and down the country who've been arrested, believe it or not, for making comments about trans women, who've had police knocking on their door because of something they posted on social media, taken down to the police station, held for hours on end, you know, never charged, by the way, but sometimes had one of those non-crime hate incidents logged, you know. So that's been an assault on our liberty in a way far more than the Supreme Court has been.
But Mike, they'll simply find something else to do this about. It's not that this has been a convenient thing for them to pursue lately, but there will be something else that people will be.
Well, maybe we can shut that down as well.
But you need the fundamental reform you need is elsewhere. You have to change the kind of ideas that are taught. You also have to have, as I've often said, a total reform of the police. And when I say total, I mean a new police force has to be constructed, built upon proper policing principles. And when that's ready, the existing one needs to be disbanded, because it simply is not a police force.
It's not fit for purpose, is it?
Well, it's worse than that. It's fit for another purpose. And I say, if it can't arrest people for saying that men are men and women are women, then it will find something equally outrageous to arrest them for instead. Don't think that's all going to stop just because of this ruling, because it won't.
Okay. And let me take you back to your time as an industrial correspondent, because I wanted to ask you about the impending summer of discontent that we're hearing all about. I just spoke to a representative of the Unite Union who gave me the firm impression that that's probably what's coming. because there are several councils around the country who are likely to suffer the same fate as Birmingham and the bin crisis, in addition to NHS workers who are going on strike already in Nottingham, and the unions very much flexing their muscles. Do you see this as a return to the 70s? You remember the 70s, you worked during it. What's your view?
I don't know. I've been struck by this as this very long-running strike, whereas normally the modern strike is just a sort of protest strike for a couple of days. And that is something, if not new, it's something which hasn't been around for a long time. But I would always warn people, there are strikes which have some justification, generally when people have had something which the employer then proposes to take away. And that's what really gets people's goats and why they do it. Also, local authorities, they spend so much money on, first of all, enormous salaries for their own chief executives and other high-ups, and on pensions, and they also spend immense amounts of money on politically correct propaganda and condom distribution offices and things of that kind. Why is it that when they're compelled, as Birmingham is, because it's been overspending for so long, to make cuts, that they fall on the people who do about the only thing in the country that councils actually do properly and which people value, namely the collection of rubbish? Wasn't something else they could have cut? So I don't... What I learned in those years as an industrial correspondent is that some strikes had justification and some did not, and to try to tell the difference between the two. To listen carefully to what the unions say, because they're not always wrong, and to believe, as I continue to do, and this particularly since the vital role of strikes in the overthrow of communism in Poland, to believe that a free country has to have free unions which are free to withdraw their labour.
For sure. I wouldn't disagree with that. A man's freedom to withdraw his labour is a very important liberty, and Conservatives should be very wary about demanding that it be taken away, and they should always examine these strikes. Look, the miners' strike, Scargill strike, a ridiculous attempt at more or less a coup d'etat. You probably remember Bill Stokes' outrageous steel strike, where they went on strike because of closures, and thereby they deprived British industry of supplies of British steel. Large amounts of British industry at that point during that strike turned to foreign suppliers, and so the steel industry was gravely damaged by a strike supposedly aimed at defending it. There are stupid strikes which need to be condemned and discouraged, and other strikes where I think we need to think more carefully. I don't know enough about the Birmingham thing, but I have to say that there is going to be an awful lot of trouble for people who are in work at the moment, partly because of the increase in national insurance which the government have imposed, which has made it more costly to employ everyone. And this will create pressure, but it doesn't mean that all the eruptions of protest which then happen illegitimate or wrong. That wasn't the point. That wasn't the point I was trying to make. I just thought that there's certainly the sort of the storm clouds are gathering for such an event.
But aren't there other things? Look at Birmingham. Aren't there other things? I mean, allowances for councillors themselves are going up, aren't they? Aren't there other things they could cut without slashing the pay or altering the conditions of bin men? Well, as I say, among the few council workers who do something recognisably useful.
No, definitely. No, I was talking to the Unite guys and saying, isn't it really the council's fault that they've mismanaged their budget to such an extent that they basically went bankrupt in 2023, chasing after this equal pay thing, which was something else that Tony Blair left behind as his legacy, which is you've got to pay women the same amount as you've got to pay men. They then invented an entire pay structure trying to compare one job with another one, which were two completely different jobs. And they got themselves all wrapped up in it and ended up wasting millions.
I think your friends at the Supreme Court had some involvement in that as well, didn't they?
They're not my friends. I'm not having that. But tell us, talking of British Steel, what have you made of the Scunthorpe scenario? Coming back to I mean, you might have had to go to Parliament on Saturday.
Well, it didn't have to go to Parliament. That was all performance art, wasn't it? It could easily have been done by a decision taken in Whitehall, as far as I can see. It's a rearguard action. I would love it if a British government really seriously decided to protect and defend and expand the British steel industry, because it's such totally indispensable sinew of national life, economy, and independence. You have to have a steel industry, and the neglect of it and the willingness to allow foreigners to take it over and to buy steel from abroad over the past 40 years has been a disaster for us. I don't think you'll find the French have made that mistake, because they're very, very careful to keep an eye on their national sovereignty. And we have not been. I'm pleased if anybody is waking up to it, but there's an awful long road from saving a couple of blast furnaces at Scunthorpe to reviving the steel industry. And here's an interesting thing. If we want to have a steel industry, we really ought to have a coal industry instead of getting the coking coal sent up from Australia by boat. And there was an attempt to revive our coal industry a couple of years ago, which has been squashed by the amazing Mr. Miliband, of course, on the grounds of net zero. So we're going to have to make up our minds. Are we going to bankrupt ourselves with net zero? Are we going to crush what industries we have for net zero? Or are we actually going to start running this country in an intelligent way?
Well,
what do you think the answer to that will be?
Well, I mean, Jonathan Reynolds, the fake solicitor, is now in charge of British Steel, so I think that answers that question. But the other problem is that have you noticed how they no longer now use the words coking coal? They now call it raw materials, because they don't want to remind anyone that we don't actually have the ability to dig it out of our own ground because we shut all the mines.
Yeah, there's also been this pretense that electric arc furnaces can substitute for blast furnaces,
which they can't. No.
Blast furnaces are absolutely essential for a steel industry, and for those you have to have coking coal.
Yeah.
And we have, I have to point out, large amounts of coal still buried beneath the surface of this country. And there was an old joke, wasn't there, during the 1940s about how the then Labour government had managed to create a shortage of coal and of fish in a country entirely surrounded by fish and built wholly on coal. And here we are doing something similar again.
Yes, and my heart sank when I saw old Jonathan Reynolds there inside the blast furnace, who came out declaring that it was so hot he thought he would melt.
Yes.
Yeah, what do you think it was going to be like?
It reminds me of that scene in the wonderful Chernobyl series where the Soviet Minister for Mines goes to see some coal miners.
Yeah.
And they all kind of slap him on the shoulders with their filthy black coal-stained hands and say, "Now you look like a Minister of Mines."
Absolutely right. Well, great to see you again, Peter. Thank you very much indeed. Have a good Easter. Peter Hitchens, columnist at the Mail on Sunday. I should start wishing people a happy Easter. I think we're going to do that from this point on, 8:20 on Thursday. Maunday Thursday, we might say. Let's get a voice note from Jill.
Morning, Mike. Jill from Leeds again. Nice to see you again this morning and your team. I'm just wondering if Keir Starmer might be getting a little bit confused with the being Easter and with the new ruling about women being women. I wonder if he's getting Easter eggs mixed up with fertility eggs, and that's why there's been no statement on either. Great show, Mike. Have a good day. Bye.
Maybe he's got. I wonder if there's a word for the fear of eggs. I'll have to look it up. Maybe he's got a fear of eggs. Starmer. I mean, he's got all sorts of other problems, hasn't he? Will Keir Starmer retract his statement of a small number of women do have penises? Ha ha, says Jason in Nottingham. And John says, Mike, what a mad country we live in where it takes a judgment from lawyers to define to our medical professionals at the NHS what male and female actually is and whether strapping great blokes will stop being asked if we are pregnant. I think I might have read that one out before. Hi, everyone, says Mark. He said, would it be possible for Mike to wish my partner Joanne, a woman, a happy 50th birthday today? No. Yeah, of course, it's all right, Mark. Happy birthday, Joanne. This is Talk.
She knew I didn't want her to plead guilty. She knew I wanted her to go to trial, but she felt it was her best option to get home and see her daughter at the quickest possible. Lucy is very, it's almost like when she speaks to probation at the prison, their words here, look, Lucy, in normal circumstances, this is a done deal. You're low risk and easy manageable, but you are Lucy Connolly.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. I'm Mike Graham. It's 8:23. We'll be here, of course, all the way through until 10 o'clock, until Julie Hartley-Brewer's here. We've got a voice note from Brendan on Keir Starmer's holiday.
Morning, Mike. Please stop asking Starmer to come back out of whatever hole he's crawled into. We much prefer him not on the scene. Thanks very much.
I'll see what I can do, Brendan. I'm sorry. I mean, some people don't know where he is. Nobody knows where he is. But has he got a fear of eggs? That's the thing. We've got Noah Hoffman now to speak to, political correspondent of The Sun. She's going to tell us about page 10 in The Sun today by Julie Bindel. At last, we've seen sense on sex. After 20 years of hate, bullying and physical attacks from trans activists for daring to demand women-only spaces, finally something has changed. But this is what the UK government spokesperson said yesterday. We have always supported the protection of single-sex spaces based on biological sex. This ruling brings clarity and confidence for women and service providers such as hospitals, refuges and sports clubs. Single-sex spaces are protected in law and will always be protected by this government. I'm not entirely sure that's the impression they gave, Noah. Very good morning to you. Has it always been the case?
Morning, Mike. Yesterday we saw a lot of rewriting of history from Labour. To an extent that was actually quite astounding. Labour has never, as a party, let alone individual ministers, been clear-cut on the issue of whether a woman can have a penis. For years, they've struggled to answer this basic fundamental fact of biology. And Keir Starmer himself is actually one of the top Labour brass who really struggled with this. And if I may just give you a brief timeline to highlight. So in 2022, Keir Starmer was asked to define a woman. He said trans women are the same as women. That's not just a fact, that's the law. So that's what Keir Starmer said in 2022. Skip forward a year in 2023, he changed his stance a bit as people were starting to realise that these brave feminist campaigners actually, really had a strong point here. And as people started to sort of cower less from the fury of woke extremists, then Keir Starmer said, a woman is an adult female, but wouldn't really elaborate on that further. Then we had the most bizarre attempt at defining a woman of all in July 2024, when he said 1 in 10,000 women can have a penis, but the rest of them can't.
Right.
So to say that he's had a clear-cut position on this is just not true.
Absolutely. And for single-sex spaces in that conversation, let's check this out. I've got a load of quotes here. One from David Lammy. Those who want to deny males access to women's spaces are dinosaurs who want to hoard rights. Alex Sobel MP, when he was asked, do you agree that there should be sex-segregated facilities for women in hospitals, schools, refuges and prisons? He said no. They're now claiming that they always believed that that was the case. Lisa Nandy, should child rapist Christopher Wharton be housed in a women's jail? Now he identifies as a woman. She says, I think trans women are women and they should be accommodated in a prison of their choosing. Huh?
Yeah. It's quite funny, and it is quite brave of them to come out on a limb and say that they've been fighting the good fight the whole time, when we literally have pages and pages of receipts suggesting that otherwise. Now, don't get me wrong, any change in position to one of common sense is going to be welcomed, but I think the public don't want to be taken for fools. Yeah. And I think the women who were there from the beginning fighting this fight, brave people like Julie, our columnist, brave national treasures like J.K. Rowling, those were the women who were there for the beginning, making sure that our rights were upheld, and they are the people who deserve all the praise today.
Absolutely right. And Julie writes in The Sun today about various groups of women, the campaigning Darlington nurses, Kathleen Stock, the lecturer who was hounded out of Sussex University, Professor Joe Phoenix, also choreographer Rosie Kay, whole numbers of people which we've forgotten about probably, who either lost their jobs or their livelihoods or were booted out. I mean, you yourself put a tweet out yesterday, Noah, about when you were at university, you could never have probably said what has now been stated to be the law.
Yeah, it was crazy. So just a very brief anecdote. I remember at Edinburgh University, and I was there during the peak woke years. So it was really, really rough. I remember being in a feminism tutorial, and we had to sort of state an observation about the room. And I said, oh, it's really interesting. You know, everyone here is a woman. And then someone put up their hand and said, excuse me, you can't assume everyone's identity. Some people may be non-binary, some people may be men.
Right.
I'm like, no, you're all obviously women. And there was just this absolute thought policing that was pervasive in universities. And you know what, Mike, after I put out that tweet, someone DM'd me, a current Edinburgh Uni student, and said, actually, it's not got any better.
Really?
And in some areas, it's got worse.
Right.
So in the general public discourse, there's now been an acceptance, but there are sectors of society sort of immune to the vibe shift in common sense. And I think academia is one of them.
Yeah, I think absolutely right. And this is where it's going to start getting interesting. The Times take on it this morning is that you know, there's going to be chaos in some public sector bodies, in particular the NHS and even the police and possibly other, you know, forms of civil service and government, because they've lived this kind of bizarre alter ego life for so long, where people have had to put their pronouns at the bottom of emails, where, you know, men have been walking into hospitals being asked if they're pregnant. You know, are they out now going to completely reverse all that, do you think?
Well, if we're taking Health Minister Karen Smith as a starter, who is on the morning round today, it's not looking good. She was unable to answer what hospitals should be doing now in light of this ruling. The Health Minister could not answer that question. She was also asked whether trans people should be using female changing rooms. She couldn't answer the question. So there's a long way to go before we reach any sort of cohesive understanding as a society about what this ruling means, because there are still individuals in positions of power, as well as institutions and sectors in society, that really just cannot grapple with this basic concept of biology.
Right. And I've been talking about Keir Starmer obviously a lot this morning. He's on holiday. Nobody knows where. He's been very quiet. He hasn't tweeted for practically 24 hours. He's literally just put a tweet out now, 20 minutes ago, which says this: waiting list down, appointments up, more patients able to access tests and treatments closer to home. Our plan for change is fixing the NHS so working people can get care when and where you need it. So I've just asked him, will male patients still be asked if they're pregnant? Because you would think that here is the man who continually goes on and on about how he's the top lawyer in the country. He was the top prosecutor in the country at the CPS. He lives by the rule of law. He loves a legal framework. Everything he does is framed by the law. Why has he said nothing about this new Supreme Court ruling?
I think he will be very happy that his holiday coincides with this ruling. He really does not enjoy talking about this subject.
Yeah.
And in the lead up to the general election, years in the build up, actually, he really tried to avoid it like the plague. So I'm not surprised that he's not, or his staff haven't said anything, although privately they're trying to speak on his behalf, sort of briefing that Keir Starmer held this view all along, although his previous quotes speak to the contrary. Well, but I'm not surprised.
No, exactly right. And as far as the holiday is concerned itself, I mean, we know sometimes that, you know, politicians go on holiday and they ask for us not to reveal where they've gone. Is that the case here, or do people just not know where he is?
Yeah, it is surprising, actually. No one has figured it out yet, but I do think it's only a matter of time before a tipster sends in a sneaky snap that they've taken of the PM wherever.
PM and his budgie smugglers.
Yeah, in budgie smugglers. We found out last time he went to Madeira, and that sort of came to light quite quickly. So, yeah,
wasn't that where he put his kids on ahead of everybody that was queuing for that ride or something, wasn't it?
Oh, I'm not sure. I actually didn't see that one. But yeah, I think we will. I'm sure it will come to light, but no one is sure yet.
Yeah, interesting. We'll keep watching this space. No, good to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed. Noah Hoffman there, political correspondent at The Sun. On the page 10 they've got today, Julie Bindel writing about after 20 years of hate, bullying and physical attacks from trans activists for daring to demand women-only spaces, at last we've seen sense on sex. I mean, Peter Hitchens says that the Supreme Court shouldn't even exist and people should not be as rejoicing as they are. But I think, with due respect to him, I think a lot of women have got every right to be rejoicing today, because the world has changed for them, for an awful lot of them, who have been alienated and who have actually been picked upon because of their very ordinary and strong views on the basis of what the Supreme Court has now ruled on. Let's get a voice note from Gary.
Hello, Mike. It's Gary from Canterbury. You're going to talk about intelligent life on other planets. Well, it could well be, but it certainly wasn't in that spaceship that went up the other day with Katy Perry and God knows what in it. I mean, with her going on about, oh, feeling the love, showing the love, loving love, oh, yeah. What a load of baloney.
Yeah, absolutely right. Absolute plankton altogether there. In fact, plankton of the week, as some people have suggested. Plank of the week, of course, might include some of that trip by Katy Perry. You would not be surprised to know. Let's have a bit of live footage, shall we? Because apparently the Perry Bar bin depot up in Birmingham is where it's all happening at the moment. There's a few striking workers there. There's a bit of a picket line. I think this might be the place where accusations were made some time ago that the striking workers were trying to prevent the access for the gates to the bin lorries. They were trying to block the bin lorries from coming out, basically, and they were warned that they couldn't do that. I think there was a court order put down to say that they couldn't interfere with the comings and goings of the lorries going in and out of the gates. But as you heard from Unite, Birmingham City Council apparently have offered the next meeting to be next Wednesday, after they've had their long Easter weekend, which probably started today and includes tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, and even Tuesday. Extraordinary. Here at the Home of Common Sense, we're working, of course, Good Friday and Easter Monday. Why wouldn't we? We'll take Saturday and Sunday, thanks, because it's a normal weekend. Unless we have to get a special medal for working on a Saturday, for heaven's sake. Take 34.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 8:36. We were talking earlier about the goods and foods that you can't now bring back from the European Union. You have to be disappearing off for a few days in Euroland. And Paul in Suffolk says, because we pointed out that chickens were not banned, but everything else which was sort of meat was. He says, love the show. Chickens are unaffected by foot and mouth, primarily because it affects cloven-hoofed animals. Have a great day. Yeah, but I mean, even so, if you're on a farm and the cloven-hoofed animals have got foot and mouth and the chickens are wandering about, isn't there a risk there of some kind? I don't know. Well, as you can tell, I don't know. I'm not a vet. Stephen, on the bin strike, go ahead.
Right, you know this, all this rubbish about Birmingham rubbish? I can see it from all angles, really, mate, if I'm honest. I mean, if somebody tried to cut my wages like that, I'd be like, nah, I ain't having it. So I get that. But then again, I'm looking at it I'm watching TV and there's people leaving sofas and old chairs and stuff like that. That's not general waste anyway, so they're not really helping. People that are doing that, you're not really helping yourselves, are you? You know, leaving mattresses outside and stuff. I mean, at the end of it all, there's only one person to blame, and that's the government, mate. They should draft the army in. You know, they've got the HGV licenses. Get the army in, and then get all these migrants out on the streets with an high-vis vest, a pair of gloves. They're not doing out anyway, loitering around every day in a five-star hotel. Just get them out there, get them cleaning it all up, and just draft the army in with HGV licenses and get it all cleared. Problem solved, mate. The government are to blame.
Yeah, Stephen, I think certainly the government should be fixing it, and they should be doing a lot more for Birmingham City Council and for the people of Birmingham, because if their councillors are there saying we can't have a meeting for practically another week, so let another week of rubbish pile up, that's absolutely unacceptable. There's no way that that should be allowed. But I'm with you, Stephen. Listen, I don't expect everybody to be on the side of the unions, and I wouldn't expect myself to be on the side of the unions very often. But in this case, if they are being told they have to take a pay cut, you know, why should they take a pay cut when the Birmingham City Council themselves have been so useless at running their own budget? That's the point. Robert says this, for the first time ever, Mike, I've got the hump with you. There is nothing funny about foot and mouth. Do you not remember millions of cows being slaughtered and burned in the fields? It's possible foot and mouth came here on a plane in a sandwich. There's not a lot of chance of that, though, is there? I mean, listen, I wasn't being flippant about foot and mouth. I know it was awful. I remember those horrible scenes of, you know, piles and piles of cattle being burned, which it turns out, of course, didn't need to be burned because, don't you remember who was responsible? It was that ridiculous professor, wasn't it, whose name escapes me for the moment, who was the same professor who got caught out having an affair with somebody during COVID. Do you remember his name? Can't remember it. But he was the same guy, and Neil Ferguson, that was him, the same guy who estimated how many cattle would die as a result of the foot and mouth outbreak back in the day. And he got that massively wrong in the same way that he had an estimate of how many people would die from COVID, which he also got massively wrong. And he's probably still got a job down at Imperial College. He got found out, didn't he, because he was playing away, unfortunately, when everybody was being told to stay at home. He was off with his mistress, having a lot of fun. Mike says, pop in Cyprus. I've been telling my wife sex matters for years. Thank you. Lee in South Wales says, happy Easter, Mike, and thanks for the excellent show. And apparently, says Frank, ovophobia is the fear of eggs. So maybe that's what he suffers from. Old Keir Starmer, loving the show. He says, let's talk to Robert Bates, who I'd completely forgotten about. My apologies. Research Director is here for the Centre for Migration Control. Robert, very good morning to you. We had the news this morning that we kind of saw yesterday. 705 migrants have now come in one single day to this country. We've got a migrant of the day as well from Nigeria, who apparently has a couple of autistic children who would miss him if he was deported, so he can't be deported. You know, what is going on? I mean, there's going to be 1,000 a day, it seems to be, before we get into the summer.
Yeah, you look at the actual statistics, we are now, I think, about 42% up currently than where we were this time last year. So it's pretty clear now to anyone that's been following this that the Labour Party, far from actually dealing with the situation, you know, tackling the asylum backlog and stopping the boats, are actually making the situation a whole lot worse. They've been scrabbling around since they got elected and had put in the bin the Rwanda scheme, which had some semblance of truth to it and would likely have, if we'd left the ECHR, had actually, you know, done somewhat to stymie the flows. But they've been staggering around from gimmick to gimmick, really without an idea of how they actually bring the numbers down. And unfortunately, now we're hearing again, you know, these plans to do a deal with France potentially on the table as well that would only make the situation worse. It's a government that are completely cloth ear to the concerns of the public about this issue and are now just staggering around without a clue.
Well, I mean, this idea of one-for-one exchange with France is mad, isn't it? I mean, we got it breaking into the show just before we finished the show yesterday, about 9:30, where it was like, you know, I likened it to sort of loading, at that point, 700 people onto sort of 14 coaches, driving them all onto a ferry, taking them all to France, dropping them all off, and then picking up another coach, 14 coach loads full of 700 more people, and bringing them back here. What's the point? You know, you're not reducing the numbers, you're just bringing different migrants in.
Exactly, and you made a great point earlier in the show that those people that we'd be bringing over from France are far more likely to have their asylum application ultimately approved as well. If they're purporting to know someone in the UK already, then the likelihood is that the Home Office will be greenlighting their asylum application. So that does nothing to actually, you know, deal with the creaking asylum system that we have. There is only actually really one solution at the moment to tackle what, you know, is a £6 billion bill that the taxpayers been having hoisted upon them every single year, and that's to actually freeze temporarily the asylum claims, because that is a huge deterrent. It sends a very clear message to those people coming across on the boats that, you know, if you come into the UK illegally, you're not going to have the right to stay long term. And it also allows us to get to grips with what has been an escalating crisis that has been burdening taxpayers with huge bills.
And also, do they think we're really stupid? I mean, do they really think that's the case? Because, you know, first of all, the 700 that you take back and dump in France again are probably going to come back over on the next dinghy. You know, their view is that, oh, well, if we cut out the ability for them to stay, then they won't be paying loads of money to get on dinghies. Well, lots of them don't pay money to come on the dinghies. They get themselves into hock to work for some gangmasters, or they work for some drug gang or something, and they work in the black market, and they pay back the money, supposedly, that they would have been paying to come over. So there's not always a cash exchange. And also, the numbers of people who would claim to have relatives here would probably go up massively, because our hapless Home Office would just go, oh, you've got a relative in Leicester, have you? Oh, that's fine. What's their name? Oh, here it is. And they'll just let them in.
Yeah, quite right, exactly right. And let's not forget as well that only a third of asylum claims are actually of those coming across the boats as well. A large number are coming via legal routes and then overstaying their visas. So what I would do if I was a would-be economic migrant purporting to be an asylum seeker, I'd get myself on a tourist visa, stay in the UK, tell my family members, tell my mates, get yourself to France. I'll then claim asylum. You then say you know me. Before you know it, they're getting hoisted over, and we're swapping out some people that have come across on a boat. So the problem will only escalate. I mean, it's a clear increase in the pull factor that, you know, we have got so many already as it is, but this is just another addition to the stockpile at this point. We are fast becoming the soft touch of Europe, and I am very concerned that if we get dragged into any kind of scheme or collaboration with France, that would then proliferate, and we'd end up, before you know it, in some Europe-wide scheme in which the whole continent is just dumping their problems on us as well. We know for a fact that the British officials are just incompetent when it comes to negotiating with Europe, so I can well see that happening.
And we can also see now that Keir Starmer is edging ever closer to Europe with every single day that passes. You know, he wants to get closer trade, he wants to get closer kind of, you know, connections with net zero agreements and things like that. So there's almost bound to be some kind of overall European, you know, migrant policy that he's going to sign himself up to.
Yeah, well, he's a Europhile by heart, isn't he? He was, you know, Remainer in chief in his worldview. Working with Europe is the be-all and end-all, which is, you know, ironic given that this is a prime minister that, if he'd played his cards slightly differently, could have been one of the biggest beneficiaries of the Brexit freedoms that were actually available to him, you know, with the potential for a trade deal with the US on the table. But, you know, he is well and truly wedded to the idea that Europe knows best, and I think that is probably what we're going to see over the next couple of years, is him increasingly trying to cozy up to them and to bend to their will.
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, let's hope we can try and put a stop to that. Robert Bates, thank you very much indeed, Research Director of the Centre for Migration Control. Let's have a word with Daniel, who's in Epsom. Daniel, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Chief. How are you?
Not bad at all. I'm just reading about a Nigerian fraudster jailed for 7 years after abusing the government's coronavirus business loan scheme. He nicked about 50,000 quid out of the fund, went to jail, but he can't be deported because he's got 2 kids who would miss him, apparently.
Oh, well, perhaps we should give him a free house and some benefits as well.
Well, he's probably already got one.
He probably has. Oh, the reason I'm ringing, Mike, is I think there's an irony, there's a poetic irony in the air at the moment, because all the people that 10 or 15 years ago, if you mentioned immigration destroying the fabric of Britain and ruining the country, they would have called you a racist, and they would have said you're a little Englander. But now what's happening 10, 15 years later, even the people on the left, right, even the lefties, the women that are getting harassed in London, the men that are getting beaten up and having their phones stolen in London, they're kind of coming around to our way of thinking. And I'll tell you how I know this, because Epsom and Ewell, where I live, is the #1 place for people. Everyone's getting out of London, right? This is the #1 place for people to get out of London. House prices here are skyrocketing. I've got a friend who's just bought a house in Tunbridge Wells, right? And he was telling me that when the estate agent was taking him around, basically the guy was going to him, look, he goes, look, basically I'm getting multiple inquiries every day. The vast majority of people that have made some money in London, they don't want to live there anymore. So it's like White Flight Part 2. I mean, my family were like the first wave, so 50s, 60s, 70s, they didn't like the way it was going and they left. Now it's happening all again. And what it is, local authorities are buying up these houses and they're just filling them full of people that we didn't want and didn't ask for. And I tell you what, the immigration crisis, both legal and illegal, if no one does anything soon, this country, this country's going
Well, we found out just the other day, didn't we, that when we reported it on this show, that not only now are the asylum seeker hotels being used for people who are coming illegally, they're being used for people who have come here on student visas and work visas, who have now overstayed those visas and who don't want to go home. So they're now putting those people who are here illegally as well now into asylum hotels.
Yeah, I mean, listen, it doesn't really matter, I don't think, now, whether you're on the left or the right. If you allow millions and millions of people with no money, no skills, really, a lot of them can't speak English, they haven't really got much to offer. If you allow millions and millions of those people who are culturally different to us, don't want to assimilate and live in our life, if you allow tens of millions to flood in and you give them a free life, and they've come for a better life at the detriment of ours, if successive governments refuse to hear us and won't get a grip, you can't be surprised when people like us just move out. We don't want anything to do with it. We've never wanted these levels of immigration. No. We can see it. I've had my phone stolen recently. Yeah. You had yours stolen. You know, we can see the decline and degradation around us.
Yeah, every day.
Every day we've asked successive governments for 20, 25 years to get a grip, and they won't. They won't listen to us. Yeah. So, you know, mate, and until everyone I know and myself is going to vote reform, because they're the only party that I think are capable. I mean, the Conservative Party, I love Rob Jemrick. I think he's a great guy. But Kemi, whatever it is, Kemi doesn't have it, yeah? And I just think that I would love to see Rob Jemrick have lunch with Nigel and create, you know, a super party of the right who's going to get us out of this mire, to actually do something, do what we asked them to do.
Yeah, it's not too much to ask, is it, Daniel? Great call. Thank you very much indeed. Daniel there with his recommendations. There's lots of political parties, of course, coming up to the local elections in May. If you are going to be voting in them, we've spoken to all the major parties, and we'll continue to do that up until the moment that you go to the polls. But, of course, we won't be able to talk about it. That would be unfortunate. It's 8:49. Hi, guys, says Lee. He says, guys, Starmer had been seen in North Korea trying to give the Isle of Wight away. Ian in Portugal says, can someone please just ask Starmer why he will not stop the boats? What is the reason? And Dean from Dagenham, regarding the small boats, it seems to me these people are wanted here for a reason. I know not what. I think the Tories used Rwanda just to make it look like they were doing something. We all knew a flight would never take off. Very possibly so. But we have found life on another planet, apparently. Let's have a voice note from Carl.
Morning, Mike. It's Carl here in Salford. Just a note on the alien life forms that they might have found. Just thinking, if there is intelligent alien life on another planet, and they will, you know, happen to be looking down on recent events, especially yesterday, they must be laughing their heads off. And they also must be very pleased that they're at least 100 light years away. In fact, if I was giving them any advice, I'd actually ask them to move further away from Earth. But there you go. Great show as always. Bye-bye.
Absolutely. Very good, Carl. Thank you very much indeed. 100 light years away is not far enough. Let's get further away. Yeah, we'll talk about some more alien life coming up in the next hour. We're also going to be talking to the Shadow Paymaster General, Richard Holden, MP. He's going to be along as well. Coming up next, though, our favourite doctor, Dr. Dean Eggett. He's working today.
Great victory for common sense. And after so many horrible news stories coming out of the UK for so long, and so many different areas, whether it's our economy, whether it's the fraying social fabric, or the hatred of our culture by the elites, or you name it, you got it. This is a remarkable good news story. And yet, of course, it therefore highlights just how far we've fallen.
Yeah.
We have this Supreme Court, which people will remember was a kind of weird, pointless Tony Blair vanity project.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 8:53. I'm here, of course, all the way through until 10 o'clock. We'll be going down to Parliament very shortly to talk to the Shadow Attorney General. Sorry, not the Shadow Attorney, Paymaster General, I should say. We're going to be talking about Operation Easter Egg as well, this terror police operation, where it's been deemed ludicrous, not least by our own Peter Blexley. They're doing an Easter egg hunt today down at Metropolitan Police Headquarters. Unbelievable stuff. Also, we're going to talk doctors in a moment with Dr. Dean Eggett. Graham, first, though, on NHS appointments.
Morning, Mike. It's Graham in Manchester. Great show. The waiting lists might be down for the NHS, but it's gerrymandering. It's nothing else. Right, I'm on the back of 2 heart attacks and a stroke, and my cardiology appointment last month was cancelled, postponed for a month, and this week got cancelled again, has been put back to May. They're gerrymandering the lists. We are being deceived by the liars that are the Labour Party.
Yeah, I mean, I've been saying this for some time. Let's get Dr. Dean's view. He's a GP in Doncaster, of course, CEO of Doncaster Local Medical Committee. Dr. Dean, very good morning to you.
Good morning, Mike. Nice to see you.
Good to see you. Happy Maundy Thursday. Story here, we're going to get to in a minute, about family doctors going to be given a £20 bonus to get people off the waiting lists, which is another kind of way that the Labour Party seem to think is acceptable to cut the waiting list down. But what about this? I think I've put this to you before, that there are certainly, there's quite a lot of growing evidence of people ringing my show, talking to me about having been given an appointment and then having it taken away from them, and almost in the same breath, like they get it one day, 2 days later they get it cancelled.
Yeah, there's a lot of work going on to reduce the waiting lists rather than treating patients, and I think this is part of that, really. I want to be clear, this isn't a £20 bonus to GPs, and it's not an incentive to not refer patients. What this is essentially when we refer a patient to a hospital specialist, it's because either we've run out of ideas, we need some help and support, or the patient has requested to be moved into a hospital because they're struggling with the GP level of care.
Right.
So when we do a referral, what we're going to get now is a response back from the hospital saying, well, can you try this first, please? Or have you thought about this? And we'll get 20 quid to do something about it. So essentially, they're giving us a task. They're giving us something to do, which means then that my team has to work harder, extra hours to create solutions for patients based upon hospital advice. Now, that's going to bring waiting lists down, but it's not necessarily going to help patients, because what about those patients who actually want to be seen at the hospital?
Oh, right. And also, it's it's not as if you're sitting around, as you've described it to me, not doing anything. It's not like you need extra help with doing more work, is it?
No, absolutely. And what am I going to do with 20 quid? This is piecemeal funding.
Right.
Even if I refer a large number of patients through, there's no guarantee that actually this money will keep coming through, and therefore I can't actually invest it in care for patients. I can't employ a staff member based upon the £20 here and there, and that's actually what I need. I need a staff member to look at patients.
It's like a tip, isn't it? It's kind of derisory. It's like somebody giving you a tip after you've sent them off to the hospital, saying, "Oh, thanks, here's 20 quid for you." I mean, it's just bizarre. But what about this business of people being removed from one list and being put on another? Because I'm sure that's what's going on. I mean, Keir Starmer, even only this morning, has put out another tweet in which he's basically said that he's cutting waiting lists down. It's another great sign that the plan for change is working. And I just think it's a bit disingenuous. I don't think anyone really believes it.
Well, we know that patients are receiving texts, phone calls and letters saying, are you still ill? You still want to be on the waiting list? And actually, in some cases where patients haven't responded, they're just removed from a waiting list because they're assumed to be okay.
Yeah.
And sometimes there is a note on that letter or phone call or text saying, well, if you don't respond, we'll assume everything is okay.
Yeah, right.
And
Or you're dead.
I agree with your previous caller. You know, that's really playing with the waiting list rather than actually treating patients.
Right. Now that we've had this ruling yesterday in the Supreme Court saying that a woman can only be a woman if she is in fact a biological woman, is that going to change the way that the NHS now operates currently, where men are being asked on a regular basis if they're pregnant, people are being asked to fill out forms about what kind of gender they wish to be identified as and all of that? I mean, is that going to have to change now?
Oh, I don't believe so. The NHS runs upon guidance from NHS in the centre down in London,
right.
And they give guidance about what they want us to do. GP practices make it up themselves because they're independent businesses, but essentially the change, or should I say a definition of the law, isn't going to change how providers treat people. We treat people based upon how they want to be treated and what the law suggests for us. And
Well, it will mean that you won't be able to put any longer trans women into a woman's ward. That's what it will mean.
Yeah, so again, hospitals will have to get their acts together to think about how to ensure that spaces are safe for biological women, but also appropriate.
You don't have to call them that anymore. You just call them women.
I'm trying to be politically correct.
No, not anymore. You don't have to be. The law's changed. You don't have to be politically correct. You're breaking the law if you're being politically correct.
But I can still be respectful for those who...
You can be, but I think it's disrespectful to women to call them biological women. Call them women.
So, OK, I'm happy to do that. So for women to be respected on wards, but also for those who identify themselves as to be women to have safe spaces in which that they can do so without forcing their rights, their beliefs upon others.
But that's the point, you know, the law has now stated that basically single-sex spaces must be protected. The government have said in a statement, even though they're actually not completely being honest, that they have always protected women's spaces and they believe that those spaces should be protected, like toilets, like female-only wards, like prisons and all that kind of thing. And so presumably policy overall in the NHS will need to change because they'll need to assume that if you're not a biological woman, that therefore you are a man.
Yeah, it's okay. And remember, you can just call them women. You don't need to refer to them as biological.
No, I used that specific phrase there because that was an important distinction to make rather than just calling them that instead of just calling them women. No, they'll have to define it, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's complex, isn't it? And so
it's not.
Well, I think it is complex because if we have a woman...
Well, it's are you a woman? Yes. OK. If you're not a woman, you're a man. There's only there's the only other thing you can be.
So that part's not complex. What is complex is if you have an individual who identifies as a woman, who may have gone, so for example, somebody who was born as a man, who identifies as a woman and has potentially even transitioned. So they have lost their male genitalia.
Yeah.
They now have female genitalia.
Still not a woman, by law.
So by law, they're not a woman, that's right. But
don't need a smear test.
Would you be comfortable, for example, to be on a ward with that individual next to you who essentially, by all intents and purposes, acts, feels, looks like a woman? So what's complex here is that what we potentially are creating is a ward situation where we might need a woman's ward, a men's
why don't you have a ward for women, or people who think they're women but who are not?
Exactly, but that's the complex part. Where is the space? We don't have space in hospitals for men and women, let alone creating a third space. So that's the real challenge here. Do we now have 3 sets of toilets? Do we now have 3 sets of wards? And that's where the policy issues come in. How do we create that safe space for people?
You've already got 3 sets of toilets, so you can use the disabled one.
I think there is the potential that could be used.
Yeah.
But again, I would personally find that quite offensive.
Yeah. Well, I think there's going to be a lot of work that needs to be done in the NHS anyway, that's for sure. Listen, we've got to run. Dr. Dean Haggett, thank you very much indeed. Have a great Easter. GP in Doncaster saying, quite frankly, the £20 rule the governments are doing is rubbish. The claim that they're reducing the waiting list is also rubbish, and we've managed to get that out of him. And we've also managed to get a little victory because he's calling women women. That's all we need to know. Coming up in the next hour, loads more stuff. This is Morning Glory. Good evening and welcome to Plank of the Week. It's the one show where you do not have to be worried about judgmental people because we'll do all the judging for you. Let's just have a look at how Humsley Useless is now spending his time.
There goes your career, mate.
Over there a bit is over towards where all the migrants come in. He's jumping there. There he goes. He goes over the bar.
Hello,
and
lady.
unfortunately, it catches on his Johnson.
If he's plank of the week, he's got a sizable plank.
That's a whole different show.
Plank of the Week, Fridays at 7 on Talk.
Hi, I'm Kevin O'Sullivan, and I've got a message for you. Welcome back to this blockbuster edition of What Just Happened. It really is a good one, I think. It's so funny that people keep calling me...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's coming up to 5 minutes past 9. I'm Mike Graham with you all the way through until 10 o'clock. The day is upon us. It's Maundy Thursday, one day until the big Easter bank holiday weekend. And, of course, it's going to be very busy on the roads and busy on the railways. There might be a strike at Gatwick. We're not sure. We haven't heard. But there's some kind of conversation going on about the possibility of that happening. So keep an eye on that. And if you do go to Europe, apparently you're not allowed to bring back a load of stuff like ham and all sorts of different meats and cheeses because there's a fear about a foot and mouth outbreak in Europe, which might spread to the United Kingdom. We'll run you through all of that coming up. Richard Holden MP's here with us, Shadow Paymaster General down on College Green. We'll talk to him again in a moment. The two big stories of the morning, of course, is the day 2 of the common sense outbreak over at the Supreme Court, where incredibly they decided that you can only be a woman if you're actually born a woman. It's been called a victory for common sense, a victory for women. J.K. Rowling yesterday hailed it as backing the rights of women and girls defined by biological sex, a win for common sense. J.K. Rowling joins the common sense revolution. Maybe we should send her a bumper sticker for one of her cars. It's got to be done. And also, we are not alone, apparently. Over in some planet called K218b, which sounds like my producer Christian's postcode, they found some plankton in the sea. Well, they haven't found plankton in the sea exactly, but they've seen it on a telescope. They say that the discovery is enormous, and it could be that there is life in this planet, which is 100 and something light years away. So we're not going there anytime soon. And if we had to send Katy Perry there, it would take her millions and millions of years, apparently. So we'd never see her again. So that would be a bad idea, obviously. We're also talking about NHS waiting lists. Keir Starmer, too. When is he going to come out and say that he hails this a great victory for women from the Supreme Court? He's on holiday. We don't know where. Nobody knows where he's gone. And he's gone very quiet. So, we want to hear from you, Mr. Starmer. Let's get on with it. 0344 499 1000. The bin problem goes on in Birmingham. We spoke to a Unite member, a Unite official actually this morning, who said the next meeting he's been asked to have with Birmingham City Council is not until next Wednesday. So I'm afraid it's going to get smellier and stinkier over the bank holiday weekend, because there's only one thing that you know that's going to happen, is that more and more rubbish is going to pile up outside people's houses. Absolutely extraordinary stuff. The police have also been slammed here in London, Metropolitan Police, because today what are they doing? They're not doing a knife hunt, they're not doing a hunt for criminals, they're doing an Easter egg hunt, because they think that would be good for their morale. For heaven's sake, this is Morning Glory, let's get it on. Also coming up later on in this hour, author Douglas Murray joins us. We've got his book here on democracies and death cults. It's a new book that he's got out on Israel, Hamas and the future of the West. A fascinating and very important book. And we'll be talking to Douglas Murray about that later on in this hour. Let's say a very good morning, though, to Richard Holden, MP, Shadow Paymaster General. Richard, nice to see you. Happy Easter.
Nice to see you, Mike. Happy Easter.
Now, I've got one question for you. When is Keir Starmer, the chief lawyer in this country, the man who lives by the framework of the law, the man who knows the law inside out, the man who said that he was the chief prosecutor and he knows how to prosecute the law in all situations, when is he going to come out and say how happy he is that the law has now been clarified so that we know that only a biological woman who was born a woman can be a woman?
Well, it's a very good question, Mike. This clarification for the Equalities Act has been absolutely unanimous by the Supreme Court, which has been fantastic news for those campaigners for women's rights up and down the country. And, you know, Keir Starmer has flip-flopped over this issue over the years, saying that, well, you know, some women can have penises in the past. That's obviously clearly not the case. That's what the Supreme Court have determined. And I think the Equalities and Human Rights Commission now need to come forward with that guidance on how we can ensure all of these issues that we've seen with women being put into difficult situations because they've got biological men in their prisons or in their women's refuges and all that sort of thing. We need to get that guidance out as quickly as possible so we can stop what has been a relentless push of this nonsense over the last few years.
Yeah, absolutely right. The one thing that Starmer has said so far this morning, it's the first tweet he's put out in 24 hours, is he says waiting list down, appointments up, more patients able to access tests and treatments closer to home. Our plan for change is fixing the NHS so working people can get care when and where you need it. Well, that's just rubbish, I'm sorry to say. I get people every single day talking to me on this show about how they get appointments made and appointments broken, how they're getting no faster access to a GP. They're still waiting 7, 8, 9 hours in A&E to be treated. I mean, appointments are not up. Waiting lists are only down because they're removing people from those lists. They're not actually seeing them. You know, when is this guy going to start telling the truth?
Well, it's a really good question. One of the biggest issues I've had locally in Basel and in Billericay is my GPs have been coming to me locally and saying, Richard, we've got a real problem at the moment because this national insurance tax hike, which is absolutely hitting them, they are not being given any extra funding to meet. So they are having to find out their own budgets, which means either reducing the amount of hours they're going to put their doctors onto the front line for, or on the flip side, reducing those reception staff. So actually all of those appointments that need to be made just can't be made. Right. So they're being absolutely hammered. And I don't think this has even crossed the mind of Keir Starmer and Rachel Reeves that all of these tax increases they're putting through, yes, they're absolutely hammering private businesses, who are the ones who actually fund our public services, but they're actually hammering the public services themselves as well. Because I've got schools, GP services in my constituency coming to me and saying, we're not getting the funding to even meet the extra national insurance costs, so they're going to have to cut staff as well.
Yeah, well, that's the problem. I mean, we had inflation figures coming back out of the National Office of National Statistics yesterday at 2.6%. I had an avalanche of people getting in touch with me to say, how can inflation only be at 2.6%? We've got, you know, water bills going up, you know, 50% sometimes. We've got council tax up sometimes as much as 10%. We've got every single thing you go to buy in the supermarket is up by at least a third, you know, and it's going to get worse in April.
Yeah, look, I think we have seen, due to some international factors, petrol has come down a little bit over the last couple of months.
Well, oil's come down,
but I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, exactly. But I think actually when you look at all of these tax rises that are coming through and other things, I think I really don't think we're out of the woods at all on inflation. And I'm sure a lot of what your listeners are getting and viewers and my constituents get, the actual feeling on the ground, I'm sure that'll feed through into the inflation numbers in coming months as well.
Yeah. And the final question on Keir Starmer, I'm sorry to concentrate so much on him. Do you think he might wish anybody a happy Easter? Do you think there's any chance of that?
Well, it's not been the way he's done things in the past, is it? Let's be honest. I think what I really want from Keir Starmer, if I'm totally honest, is I want him to accept that his policy of apparently smashing the gangs, which has actually led to a 50% increase in the number of people crossing the Channel, is total nonsense. He should have stuck with a deportation plan like we were pushing for with Rwanda, and he should actually now say he was wrong and get on board with that, because we're never going to stop these crossings without a proper overseas solution. And I think that's one of the biggest things, the biggest bugbears that I've got, is that basically he says one thing and then he actually delivers something completely different. And he said he was going to smash the gangs. If he wants to smash them, we have to have that offshore processing alternative. If not, then it'll just be another of those promises which he's made and never stuck to.
Yeah, I'm afraid so. Richard Holden MP, thank you very much indeed. Shadow Paymaster General. It's a bit like that line in The Departed, isn't it? When you're going to marginally disrupt the gangs as opposed to actually smashing them. They haven't even managed to do that, for heaven's sake. Graham in Mid-Wales says, my daughter had a letter to cancel her neuro appointment, but she never had one in the first place. When she questioned it, they said, don't worry, you'll get one soon. And she did. 2 days later, the appointment they cancelled arrived with a letter apologising for not sending the letter. But it's cancelled. So what was the bleeding point? So you get the cancellation before you get the appointment. That's a new way of cutting down the waiting list, isn't it? You've already, self-entered yourself on a waiting list to nowhere. Brilliant. Let's get a voice note from Darren.
Mike, Darren from Suffolk, glorious day. I'll tell you what, I've been saying this for years. The only way to stop the boats is get an agreement with France that anyone who comes over illegally on a boat gets shipped back on the next ferry. They will stop within a week because they know they can't stay. Then you talk to France about opening a centre in Calais, and what you do, anyone with a passport or ID gets a fast track into the UK, obviously providing we know and want them. But we work out, we say, look, we'll take maybe 30, 40, 50,000 a year, and we'll do that sensibly, and then we know everybody that's coming in, job done, no more crossings on a boat. It's not rocket science, common sense.
Yeah, it's not rocket science, it is common sense, but it's way too many, Darren, I'm afraid. 50,000 a year, way too many, because what we need to do is do all of those things that you suggested, get them into a centre in Paris, or in France rather, and bleeding well leave them there, and don't actually invite them to come here at all. And so I'm sorry, until we get rid of a few, we haven't got any room, and we'll limit up, as they used to say in Wall Street. Perhaps Starmer has gone to a Smagaloof for his holidays. Yeah, very good from Pete the Mole. Mike, says Chris, good God, even the doctor's mind was screwed up about women. No wonder the NHS is so poor. Let's talk to James Price, former government advisor. James, very good morning to you.
Hello, my friend. How are you?
A very happy Easter to you. I'm going to say it to you because you probably won't be wished a happy Easter by the Prime Minister, who appears to have gone a bit silent on the matter of Easter, and also silent on the matter of women. I keep saying I'm waiting for him to tell us, as the chief lawyer in-house that we have in this country, that he abides by the rule of law, he lives by the rule of law, he likes the legal framework, and he's very happy now to correct himself that a woman is only a woman if she was born one.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure that Person Number 10 will find some obscure religious festival from a long dead religion. Maybe the ancient Roman cult of Mithras will be celebrating something over the weekend that they can
or some
celebrate instead of the
druid
resurrection.
thing going on down at Stonehenge you could say a big hello to.
Exactly right. On the women point, though, this is it. This is the danger I think we've got more broadly of kind of live by the courts, die by the courts. All of the Brexit wranglings, the people who didn't respect the result of the referendum taking things to court and all the rest. Sometimes it doesn't go on your side, and then that's it. I would rather that the Supreme Court didn't exist at all. It's a 20-year-old kind of aberration that Tony Blair put in to try and make us a bit more like America for no discernible benefit whatsoever. But at least let's say some solace that some of the most senior judges in the land are capable of stating a biological truth so obvious that even toddlers can understand it. that is at least some small piece of good news. But my goodness, it's a remarkable sign of how far we've declined as a country that we're cheering and celebrating the fact that top lawyers can state an obvious truth finally.
And I just had a very interesting conversation with our favourite doctor, Dr. Dean Eggett, who's a very reasonable guy. Basically, he's not too mad, he's not too extremist about anything at all. But even he was struggling, because I said, surely the NHS is now going to have to reverse all of its policies. You know, you can't start asking men if they're pregnant. You can't ask people to see whether or not they've got a cervix, or whether they need a smear test if they're trans. You know, all of that's going to have to go out the window. And he started talking about biological women. I said, no, don't call them that. Just call them women. And he was really, I mean, you could see he was so indoctrinated into the language of the woke that he could barely do it.
Yeah, absolutely right. And this isn't new for the NHS. Again, it's sort of we've all caught America brain on these things. You and I both love the United States, but when they sneeze woke, we catch the worst of the viruses.
Yeah.
The NHS once had some glossary of terms, and it had this acronym BIPOC, which stood for Black Indigenous People of Colour. And what do you mean by indigenous people when it comes to the United Kingdom? Are we talking about the Picts or the Woads or the Celts or something? You know, it is just this kind of ridiculousness. And that would be fine and funny if it was some unimportant, trivial little quango. But this is people's lives on the line.
Right.
You're going to have a junior doctor like desperately searching for the cervix of a person who's obviously a man? No. Although, of course, our Foreign Secretary David Lammy does think that you can grow a cervix if you're a man, if given the right drugs.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's not all, is it? The civil service is going to be riddled with this kind of nonsense. We're going to have pronoun police all over the place. You've got, at least the private sector, at least seems to have been ditching the DEI stuff quicker than the public sector. But, you know, the police is riddled with it. You've got people, I mean, we had a guy calling Jeremy Kyle show yesterday who said he was arrested by the police and taken down to the police station, dragged away from his children because he was reported for apparently suggesting that trans women were not women. And he was actually arrested for it.
Absolutely extraordinary. I saw that. Absolutely extraordinary. And I suggested to him, as I'd suggest to other people, that there are groups like the Free Speech Union that he could and should join, who will defend people when they say these sorts of things, because you should be allowed to say it. And now the Supreme Court has said it. That chap should send the same tweet out now in the safe and the knowledge that some level of sanity may be starting to return. But Mike, you make a great point of just how riddled every single institution is with this kind of stuff now. There will still be businesses as well as public sector organizations fighting a kind of doomed rear guard on this sort of stuff, and you'll still see organizations trying to get around it. We saw that in America, of course, where Harvard was found by the US Supreme Court that its admissions practices were basically completely racist. They were trying to get in as many black people as they could, to the detriment not just of white Americans but of Asian Americans, because if you were a Chinese or Singaporean American or something like that, you were statistically so likely to get into a top university, they started discriminating against you there. We'll see that still happening here. People will remember the story of the West Yorkshire police force, who when accused that they were not letting white people in, they said, yeah, that's what we're doing. Yeah, they doubled down on it because they still feel confident enough to discriminate. And what happens when we get this? Now, you get the woke will start to retreat perhaps, but you will then see people moving into other areas that are not the kind of sound, sensible, historical, Christian-inspired Britishness that we all know and love and that built a wonderful civilization. You might start finding people turn into other more pernicious ideas that also have very troubling views about what women are and what they should be treated like. But I think people will know what I mean.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Got to leave it there, I'm afraid, because we're short of time, but good to talk to you. James Price, great to see you. Former government advisor, of course, talking a great deal of common sense. Guy says, Mike, excellent show today with some good news for a change. One thing, though, can we please stop using the language of the radical left who use it as a weapon? A man who pretends to be a woman is a man. Then any debate gets exposed for what it is. For example, is it okay for a man to compete in women's sport? No. Is it okay for a man to be jailed in a women's prison? No. Is it okay for a man to go into a women's changing room? No. Etc., etc. Time. Indeed. Robin in Suffolk. Hi, Mike. The Supreme Court are on fire. Can we get them to define a border? Once again, the people know, but the government doesn't have much of a clue. Well, you wouldn't think you'd need a definition for it, would you? Coming up next, Lord Stuart Jackson is going to be joining us, and then Douglas Murray's here as well. This is Morning Glory.
we win the next general election, we will go to war with the leadership of the National Education Union. They are a clear and present danger to, frankly, to the education of children. Let's remember, teachers are there to teach children and youngsters how to think, not what to think. And I think it's a completely inappropriate thing to instruct teachers how to instruct children to think with regard to issues of current affairs and politics.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on your smart speaker, on your smart TV, and on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. It's 9:24. I'm Mike Graham with you for about just over another half an hour. Julie Hartley-Brewer here after 10, of course. We're talking very shortly about a thing called ESG, which is orthodoxy, incorporates environmental and social factors into investments. Lord Stuart Jackson is going to be joining us to talk about why it is that this kind of ethical investment, as it's called, is causing a bit of a problem for the defence industry. Let's get a voice note from James first.
While I'm talking into my phone, sending this voice note, there will be migrants being escorted off the channel that by the end of your show will be in front of us for NHS treatment, council housing and any other public service you can think of. Now we hear there's intelligent life beyond the solar system. What's the betting by the end of the year? We've got some little green men in front of us for NHS waiting lists as well.
Yeah, I wouldn't be at all surprised, although you'd have to be in a really bad place if you wanted to fly hundreds of light years to come to the NHS, where you'd be in a queue for hours and hours and hours on end. It wouldn't be worthwhile. You're better off just doing it yourself somewhere on an interplanetary scenario. Let's talk to Lord Stuart Jackson, though, Conservative peer, of course, a man that knows a thing or two about Brexit as well. I might ask you about that, Stuart, before we talk about the investment situation. Very good morning to you, by the way. Happy Easter.
And you, Mike.
Tell me why Keir Starmer is trying to edge ever closer to the European Union. You know, people voted in 2016 fairly clearly and fundamentally to leave the EU. He seems to think we should be getting closer to them as the time goes on.
Well, the problem with Keir Starmer is that he thinks that he can straddle the divide between the United States and the European Union, and I don't think he can, because at the moment, going before the Commons is a bill called the Product Regulation Bill, which sounds very innocuous, but means that despite having left the EU formally in 2021, we're going to accept for all our manufactured goods EU regulations, and we're going to have adjudication on those decisions and those regulations made by a foreign court, the European Court of Justice, without any input from the UK. So we won't be able to write the laws and we won't be able to adjudicate them in any court of law. And it's essentially a backdoor way of the Labour Party getting into a position of saying, well, look, we're following all the rules, we're doing everything the EU are doing, we might as well rejoin the single market and the customs union.
Yeah.
And obviously that's the long-term aim of someone like Keir Starmer and many in his cabinet who never accepted Brexit, think that the Brexit vote was a catastrophic error and not a great opportunity, which it is.
Yeah, indeed. Because he's also getting involved in some kind of net zero coordinated policy that he wants to share with the European Union. And just the other day we saw he wants some kind of food standards rule applied to the UK as well, which was one of the specific things that people didn't want to be a part of.
Yeah, and really what the significance of this is, of course, that if you tie yourself into EU rules over which, as I say, you have no control effectively, you don't generate the rules and you don't adjudicate the rules, then other regimes, particularly the United States, will quite possibly say to you, look, we can't trade with you we can't have a free trade agreement or a free trade treaty with you because you're effectively still in the EU because you're accepting the EU rules. And so when the EU is bringing forward more regulation, more bureaucracy, more red tape in areas like digital, which is extremely important and fast growing, the United States is going to say, look, you are to all intents and purposes just an adjunct to the EU, and we can't trust your word on this. And that's why, I mean, there's a huge amount of hypocrisy here. The EU is complaining about the US tariffs. What do they think the common tariff that they've had around the EU locking out third world countries' products for the last 40 odd years? That is a tariff. Yeah. But apparently it's good when it's the EU, but it's terrible when it's Donald Trump and the United States. It's riddled with hypocrisy. And I do think eventually Starmer and the Labour government are going to have to make a value judgment on who they align with, whether it will be the United States, the biggest and most dynamic economy in the world, or the EU, which over the years is going to shrink in dollar denomination value in trade and has got lots of economic problems.
Exactly right. And just quickly on this story about investment by pension funds into the defence business, you've drawn our attention to a piece that was in The Critic recently, written by James Graham, about how despite what the government says about investment going into defence and more money being spent, more GDP as a percentage being spent, there are a lot of pension funds that are not investing in defence, and partly that's the result of this ESG orthodoxy, environmental, social factors, ethical investing and all of that. But it turns out that the MP's pension fund doesn't even do it.
Well, I have to declare an interest here as a former MP because that is my pension fund, and therefore I do have a vested interest. But I do think the broader point is that the defence industry is a very successful part of our economy in the UK, one of the most successful. And the idea that right from student unions locking out defence contractors coming in to do graduate fairs, all the way through to having a policy which says we're going to have nothing whatsoever to do with investing in defence companies, which is technology, which is skills, which is new jobs, I think is crazy. And particularly as we are encouraging people to join the armed forces now, we have to spend more of our gross domestic product on the defence industry. And we're encouraging critics, of course, but one of the things Trump has done is energise and catalyse the European Union to look at defending its own interests by spending more on crazy. But we're taking a position in government, and I'm quite sadly in the private sector, in the corporate world, of saying that that's persona non grata, verboten. We cannot touch defence funds, because if we don't invest in defence, we're going to be in a very weak position in terms of national security and our future safety.
Yeah, absolutely right. Lord Stuart Jackson, great to have you on. We'll have to get you back on again when we've got longer time to talk to you, because we're up against the time clock, I'm afraid, at the moment. We've been watching the Perry Bar bin depot in Birmingham as well this morning. We'll take you back to there before the end of the show. Coming up next on Morning Glory, though, it is time for Douglas Murray.
the UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory, 9:33. We'll be speaking to Douglas Murray very shortly. His new book out on democracies and death cults, Israel, Hamas and the future of the West. Chris says this from Wallasey. The so-called trans is so small they can be put in a side ward without spending millions creating separate wards, which no doubt the NHS will do. Yeah, a bit like a cycling lane, isn't it? Jane says this. That doc is creating problems. 2 loos, 1 for women, 1 for men. Those that don't know still have a birth sex, says Jane. And Lorraine says Dean Eggett is symptomatic of the reason why women have had their identities eroded. It's official, Dr. Eggett. A woman is defined as biological sex and biological sex only. True that. Let's talk to Melissa in Cambridge. Hi, Melissa.
Morning, Mike.
Morning.
Thanks for my call.
Not at all. What can I do for you?
So it was with regards to the NHS GP referral scheme that you were discussing earlier. So I've... currently, I've got cervical myelopathy with spinal cord compression, which is a red flag symptom, very serious. Right. It could mean that I could become paralysed at any moment. That's how serious it is. I've been having problems with my lumbar spine, in so much so that I've been taking 20 ml of Oromorph every 4 hours because it's so painful. I went to my GP to ask to be referred to go and see a spinal surgeon, because I know something's wrong. It's extremely painful. I can barely feel my legs. And he's referred me to a musculoskeletal nurse.
Which is completely the wrong referral, right?
Yeah, I should be seeing a spinal surgeon, a spinal consultant.
Right. And have you told him that?
And I've been under the RNOH for 2.5 years.
Right.
Which is the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital in Stanmore.
Right.
2.5 years I've been under referral. I've had I've just counted 23 letters, cancelled appointments, saying, and in fact I had one for next month, and I had a letter yesterday saying, due to unforeseen circumstances, we've had to cancel your appointment.
Goodness me.
Yeah.
That's just dreadful, isn't it? So you're just waiting now, presumably?
I'm just waiting, yeah, and hoping I don't become paralysed.
Goodness gracious me. Melissa, I'm so sorry to hear that. There must be some way of speeding this up. Let me see if our producers can help you when you get off the phone. Melissa, listening in Cambridge, thank you so much indeed. That's such a terrible story and so typical now of some of the stories we're hearing about the NHS. It's not being fixed by Labour. It's not being fixed by West Streeting. If anything, it's getting actually worse. Let's talk now, though, to Douglas Murray, author on Democracies and Death Cults, Israel, Hamas and the Future of the West. His new book is out. It's been launched out there by HarperCollins. It's got great reviews, not least by Donald Trump, the President of the United States of America. Douglas, a very good morning to you.
Very good to be with you, Mike.
Thank you so much for joining us. I know you've been very busy. I've been watching a lot of the interviews you've been giving over the course of the last few days and weeks, many of them in the States, some of them here as well. And I'm fascinated by your treatise, really, that this is not just about Israel defending its country. It's not just about a terror group trying to attack another country. It's about really the future of the West, as it says on the front of the book. And it struck me that you've talked a lot about the reaction in the West, the reaction in London, in New York, in other countries and colleges around the United States of America. And I wanted to ask you this, really. I mean, because I've got a theory that the reason why so much of this is happening is because there are so many people around the world who are not just sympathetic to Palestine, they're actually from Palestine.
Well, that's certainly true. I say in the book, I mean, it follows on from the themes of a number of books of mine, including The Strange Death of Europe. It follows on from a theme that I thought about there. The book is about, on democracies and death cults, is about the October the 7th massacres in Israel and the nature of the group that carried out that massacre, Hamas. It's about my first-hand account, not just of what happened on the 7th of October, but of Israel's response. So I was with the IDF in Gaza, Lebanon, and elsewhere. But the main thing that I wanted to address outside of the region is this question of, since this was the largest mass killing of Jews since the Second World War, since the Holocaust, why are there so many people who are willing to say that, not everyone, but some, and so few people willing to say, well, who are the Nazis? And why are there so many of their supporters among us? And Mike, what your question alludes to is something which I say in the book. I say one of the reasons is one of the drivers of the anti-Israel, pro-Hamas marches in the last 18 months has been Muslims who hate Jews. As straightforward as that. They have brought a conflict and a theological hatred of their own that they've nurtured, and they've brought it into Britain. When they say we would like to kill the Jews first, but everyone else next, they mean it. They mean it. And this is what makes the conflict in the Middle East crucial to the rest of us as well.
It really does. And I wonder as well what on earth it means for the next stage of this conflict, as you say, because you've said in some of the interviews that, you know, this could happen here.
Well, Mike, it has. I mean, this is one of the heartbreaking things about all of this. I spoke to one of the survivors of the Nova Party. It was dancing in the morning at 6:30 with hundreds of other young people when Hamas, by the thousands, came in, invaded the country, came in and massacred and raped and beheaded and killed and kidnapped their way through that party. One of the young men who survived has a terrible story, but which I relate in the book, said to me, "What would you do if this had happened in your country?" And I thought, but didn't say, but it has. Not on this scale, but it has. We had the Manchester Arena bombing where Salman Abedi, of the Abedi family, who for some curious reason, a family of jihadists, were given birth in the UK so that he took one British girl for every year of life this country gave him. We had the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando. We had the Bataclan massacre in Paris in 2015. We have had tasters of this. It's just that whenever we've had tasters of it at a far lesser scale, but when we've had tasters of it, we in our society try to pretend it away. What were we told after the Manchester Arena bombing? But don't look back in anger. Why? Why not look back in anger when your daughters are murdered? Your children are killed. Why don't you have the right to look back in anger? And it's the same in each of these cases. And I say that in this fight between the death cults like Hamas, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, and we, the liberal democracies, the free countries like Israel, Britain, France, America, we have the right to draw the most crucial line of all, which is to say, our side or theirs, on the side of the democracies or on the side of the death cults. And if you're on the side of the death cults, you cannot be with us.
Yes. But going back to the numbers of people living certainly in this country, I know less about America at the moment than I used to, but in terms of the numbers of sympathisers, shall we say, with the cause of Palestine, and in some cases even with the cause of Hamas, you know, I mean, I remember the 70s, I remember the Six-Day War, I remember the Golan Heights being on the news every night when I was growing up in the 70s. You know, there were never any sorts of demonstrations on the streets. There was none of that because my contention is the people who are now doing those demonstrations weren't here.
No, I mean, of course. I mean, as I said in a book almost 10 years ago, The Strange Death of Europe, if you import the world's people, you import the world's problems. And we have imported this problem. Britain has an extraordinary, long existing number of Jews and Jewish community in the UK. They have been central to the UK for 1,000 years. But when we imported millions of people from Pakistan and elsewhere who are of the Muslim faith, we brought in Muslim anti-Semitism and Muslim anti-Westernism. What percent people can argue about. But we know, for instance, that even if 1% of the people who come to this country are pro-death cult, are pro-Hamas, pro-ISIS, pro-Al-Qaeda, that is a number of people more than we used to have. I was doing a BBC interview last night, and the interviewer deliberately pretended not to be able to understand this point. But it's obvious. If the Plymouth Brethren were currently massacring people in a proportion of their faith. Let's say 2% of Plymouth Brethren, and we imported millions of people who were Plymouth Brethren to the country, we would get a percentage of them who wanted to continue their violence here.
Yeah.
Everybody knows this. Nobody in Britain can say this, and nobody in Britain, crucially, will do anything about this. But they should have done by now, and they can do now.
Well, of course, now we've got a South London law firm calling themselves a human rights representation, acting for Hamas, they say, which surely I would have thought must be illegal, and trying to get their prescribed status changed by the government.
Yes. Mike, deport, deport, deport. We have no place in this country for people who want to worship death and bring death and celebrate death. We have no place for them. Deport, deport, deport. Get them out.
And what about Benjamin Netanyahu, before we finish up on Israel? There are plenty of people in Israel who think he has got a lot of blame to be taken onto his shoulders for what happened. He gets criticised by certain sections of the media there. I mean, what do the people of Israel that you've met say? What do you think of the way he's been conducting the war?
Well, by the way, he's riding high in the polls in Israel, and that's for a reason, which is that, as I say in the book, my first-hand account of this war, he managed. There were undoubtedly intelligence and military failures on the 7th, undoubtedly, unarguably, and I explained some of those, how that could have happened. But within a year of the war being started by Hamas after their invasion, within a year of the war starting, Benjamin Netanyahu and his war cabinet, his colleagues, had managed to decimate the leadership of Hezbollah, decimate the leadership of Hamas. And as we speak, the Iranian revolutionary government in Tehran, that is the sponsor, backer, trainer, and armor of these groups, is quaking because it knows that it could be next, that the head of the snake could be attacked. This is because of the policies of Benjamin Netanyahu and his cabinet. Some people have many criticisms about this. Many people have some criticisms. But any Israeli leader of left and right who I have spoken to may differ on some of the specifics, but all agree on one thing. If you get 1,200 of your citizens murdered in a day, burned alive in their houses, beheaded, raped, and 250 taken hostage, you're going to respond. You have the right to respond. They have responded. People may quibble about which means they've responded with. But we in Britain, if we had thousands of our citizens murdered in this way and killed in their homes and thousands more taken hostage, we would assert our right, I would like to think, to also be able to go after our enemies, kill or capture them, and to get our hostages back, as Israel has the right to get hers back.
And watching the demonstrations in Gaza against Hamas was kind of a surreal experience, wasn't it? Because I remember thinking to myself, there's more people demonstrating against Hamas in Gaza than there are in London. Is that the beginning of something?
It could be. It could be. I'm afraid that I'm not enormously hopeful about that. The citizens of Gaza voted the terrorist group death cult Hamas into power after the Jewish state withdrew every Jew in 2005. If there is an uprising against Hamas within Gaza, it's long overdue. There have been very brave Gazans, including one who rose up, was tortured and killed by Hamas, and his body dumped on his parents' doorstep the other day. I wish that these people had stepped up faster. Is it that they are pro living in peace with their neighbors, or is it because they are fed up with the desolation that Hamas has brought to them by starting this war? I don't know. That one's hard to see. But yes, it's long overdue for there to be an uprising against Hamas in the Gaza. And I hope very much that Hamas can be got out. It's imperative. I'll tell you why, because if you vote for a death cult and you bring in a death cult to lead you, it's not only that it is devastating for your neighbors, as it was for Israel on October the 7th, it's devastating for the society that Hamas purported to run. They brought death not only to the Jews and the Jewish nation, they brought it to their own people too. And that is because in a fight between democracies and death cults, it is a fight between groups who worship death and the rest of us who love and cherish life.
One more on what happened here yesterday. On the papers this morning, full of the world of common sense, a common sense revolution perhaps beginning. We like a lot of common sense here at Talk. Finally, the Supreme Court has defined a woman, which has embarrassed the hell out of Keir Starmer, who hasn't said anything about it, and embarrassed the hell out of an awful lot of politicians who for many years couldn't actually do it.
Well, you know, I wrote a book about this some years ago called The Madness of Crowds. And I wrote about this problem and said what was happening and what I think needs to happen. That there are many conservatives and others who are celebrating this morning that our courts can recognize the difference between biological females and biological males. But you know, Mike, I cannot see it as a great victory. I see it as a victory. I cannot see it as a great victory that our greatest legal minds have been sitting around trying to work out what the difference between men and women is, and if there is one. Feels so retarded to be going at that speed, and for our finest legal minds to be having to apply themselves to such a stupidly obvious question. We were lied to about this for years. I'm glad this has happened. But why don't we ask the next question? Why were we being made to do this? Why, when it was so patently untrue, were we being force-fed this pap? Let's find the people who did it and make sure they are the ones who face the courts now. Let's find the mutilators and the others, and let's make sure they are held accountable, including the politicians who oversaw that period and encouraged it through their ignorance and cowardice.
Very well said. Thank you very much indeed. Douglas Murray, the book is On Democracies and Death Cults, Israel, Hamas and the Future of the West. There it is. It's out right now with HarperCollins. Douglas Murray, thank you very much indeed for talking to us. This is Morning Glory.
Does she fully understand what's happened to her mum?
I think so, but I showed her a sheet the other day to say so she could see that's the date of her mum's release. So she's just seen that on the paper now. Hopefully that'll help her understand it a little bit better. She's obviously upset about it and won't talk about it a lot of the time. She just pretty much keeps herself trying to, almost like that stiff upper lip the British are supposed to have, and she has definitely got it.
UK. On DAB+. On your smart speaker. On your smart TV. And on your side. This is Talk.
Welcome back to Morning Glory. Coming up in 5 minutes, Julie Hartley-Brewer will be here telling us what's coming up at 10 o'clock. Douglas Murray there with some fascinating views on the Middle East and also on that the situation yesterday in the Supreme Court where we can now define a woman legally, as he says, maybe not the time to rejoice. Thank you for a great show, Christine says. Call me suspicious, but isn't this why our beloved leader has gone on holiday now so that he doesn't have to answer the questions? Very possibly so. Just before we take any of your calls and take some more messages on board, let me play you this. We played earlier we spoke to Onay Kassab from the Unite Union about the Birmingham bin strikes. Here's what he had to say.
Well, the situation at the moment is that we entered into talks with the council yesterday. We've gone to those talks with a number of ways that this dispute can be resolved. Unfortunately, the council turned up with nothing. And when I say nothing, I don't mean that what they put forward was so poor that it amounted to nothing. I mean they actually turned up with nothing.
What, no offer of any kind?
Correct, exactly.
Right.
So, look, as far as blaming Angela Rayner is concerned, I think the general point here is that governments over years bear the responsibility for austerity in local government, and we all know that local authorities are facing massive pressure, and there is a role for the government to play on that. Unfortunately, Angela Rayner over the last week or so has been demanding that Unite put proposals to our members to vote, or that we just accept what's on the table. But there isn't anything on the table. Yesterday, the leader of Birmingham City Council said that nobody needs to lose any money. Fine. Put that to us as a proposal, detailing how nobody's going to lose any money, and we'll be further forward. Look, we've been told previously in negotiations that now drivers will have their pay dropped from £40,000 to £32,000. If the leader wants to say that's not going to happen, that will take us forward. It's a public health risk. We accept all of that, but I think it doesn't need to happen. That's the frustrating thing for us. If the council come forward with the proposals that back up what the leader said yesterday, then this can be resolved tomorrow, and for us that's the frustrating thing.
So what's the offer now for the next meeting? Is there an offer for another meeting?
Well, the council have said that they'll meet us on Wednesday of next week. Our position...
Next week?
There you go. Exactly, Mike. Which is why my position is that we are ready to meet, and for those of us who are old enough to remember the Martini advert, anytime, any place, anywhere, over the bank holiday weekend isn't a problem. We will sit down.
You don't charge triple time for that, do you, if you meet them on the bank holiday weekend?
Me? Absolutely not. It's 24/7 with no overtime rates for me. Absolutely not.
And are you willing to make any concessions from your current position?
Yeah, yes, and we already have. When we've met with the council, we've put forward how this could be resolved with us making concessions. Look, I don't want to give away too much of what would be discussed in negotiations, but key areas for us, for instance, are, look, how can we protect the pay of the drivers, because that's simply not acceptable. If people are going to be moved to other positions within the council, then, okay, they may move, but let's make sure they're not out the frying pan and into the fire. We need to make sure that they're being moved into jobs where they are not going to face the same thing happening within a few months' time.
That's Onay Kassab there from the Unite Union talking about the Birmingham bin strikes. Beggars belief, doesn't it, that he hasn't been offered another meeting until next Wednesday. Apparently the council workers traditionally over Easter always have the Tuesday off after the long bank holiday weekend. I presume they also have Monday, Thursday off. Tomorrow, of course, is Good Friday. and that's when a lot of the traffic will begin. Some of it will probably begin later on this afternoon. A lot of you with good things to say about Douglas Murray. So much sense. He talks for all of us with common sense. Douglas Murray for Prime Minister, says Neil. Decent values and people who want a future for our country. Douglas Murray is a legend, says Graham. Talks so much sense. We need people like this in this world. And Jeff in Bedford says, happy Easter, Mike. Thank God for people like Douglas Murray. I really enjoy listening to him and his views. Yeah, and so many of you have got things to say as well about what is going on in this country, including, of course, all of the stuff about the Supreme Court decision yesterday to say that women are only women if they are born women. Chris in Ottershaw says, good morning, Mike. Now that it's been proved that half of the cabinet believe that a woman can have a penis is bilge, how many other of their beliefs are also bilge? Perhaps man-made global warming. They obviously convinced themselves of other things that are bilge. And where did they pick these bilges up from? University, perhaps?